Chapter 5369. Xia Jinyuan sighed. No, it's not suitable for you to travel with me. Don't worry, we've dealt with this kind of thing many times. There won't be any danger. Go back to work, leave the outside to us. Since Noah no longer needed to keep an eye on them, he had to think of a way to get rid of the 8 of them. How to get rid of the 8 of them? It was very simple. He could directly expose them to Cyril's men. It was the same as how they wanted to expose Noah to Cyril. Both sides had their own plans. In the end, the staff did not argue with Xia Jinyuan. He was only responsible for delivering the information and could not directly participate in the entire operation. Even if he wanted to help, he had to consider his identity. Before leaving, the staff repeatedly reminded Xia Jinyuan to pay attention to his safety and to prioritize his own life at all times. This was because he knew that it was not easy for the country to train such a group of outstanding Special Forces soldiers. They were trained to serve the country, not to be sacrificed casually. Xia Jinyuan shook hands with the staff in the car, then pushed the door open and got out. When he passed by a clothing store, he went in and bought 2 identical hats. Then he got back into the car and went to meet up with Yi Qian. Because they were in someone else's car, Xia Jinyuan did not tell Yi Qian the reason for the change in the car. He only told Yi Qian his guess when they met. Yi Qian listened for a while before he came back to his senses. He let out a long sigh and said to Xia Jinyuan, "If V8 hadn't reported to you in time today, the other group of comrades would have all been killed." The country that put Scientology under house arrest was a well-known country of bandits. In the past few years, they had been involved in the war and were the initiators of the attack. They had a strong military force, a strong intelligence network, and a group of outstanding soldiers. These were undeniable and had to be acknowledged. After saying that, Yi Qian said in a low voice with a cold look in his eyes, "Then when Noah needs to get rid of us, he will most likely use Cyril to get rid of us. Captain Xia, I'm afraid we'll have to face Cyril's men next." Before Xia Jinyuan could say what would happen to them if news of the scientists was leaked and Noah withdrew all surveillance, Yi Qian had already thought of it in advance and immediately said it. Once again, the tacit understanding between them made Xia Jinyuan's eyes brighten, dispelling the sinister look in his eyes. "Yes, Will wants us to rush to the train station. I'm afraid that Noah wants to let Cyril know about our existence. What lies ahead is a dragon's lair and a tiger's den. Are you willing to accompany me?" He reached out to Yi Qian until Yi Qian placed his hand in his palm without hesitation. His handsome face contained a deep smile as he held his lover who fought side by side. Yi Qian said, "There's a dragon to catch the dragon, and there's a tiger to catch the tiger. I'll accompany you all the way to the end." Because they were not only lovers, but also comrades who fought side by side. At this time, Will was already standing under the huge statue in the middle of the train station square. He first saw Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. While greeting Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian, he also notified Noah, who was hiding in the shadows. Noah saw the 2 mercenaries walking over hand in hand. He was not handsome, but there was a regretful smile on his well-defined face. The 2 of them, who were wearing hats that covered half of their faces, had already seen Will. They secretly exchanged glances with G3 and Z7, who had just arrived at the train station. G3 and Z7 had already discovered Noah's tracks. Chapter 5370. Will, who had been waiting for a long time, saw Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. After greeting them, he did not walk directly towards them. Instead, he walked towards the train station. He walked slowly, obviously waiting for them to catch up with him. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian quickly exchanged glances and caught up with Will. Soon, they reached Will's side. Xia Jinyuan asked, "What's the situation? Where is he?" "I don't know. He's inside. We'll know when we see him," Will said as he walked. His gaze swept around quickly. Suddenly, he quickened his pace and urged the 2 behind him, "Walk faster. Keep walking. Quick." It seemed like he was trying to get rid of someone. Yi Qian gently held Xia Jinyuan's hand and whispered, "Is he trying to get rid of Noah's gaze?" "It's possible," Xia Jinyuan said calmly. "He wants to save Alice Chung. He won't cooperate with Noah for too long." If that's the case, it'll be convenient for us to take action. There were so many people that they bumped into each other. Xia Jinyuan, who was originally holding Yi Qian's hand, put his arm around Yi Qian's shoulder and said, "If it wasn't convenient for us to take action, Noah wouldn't have let Will get away so easily. Let's see what Will has in mind first." Yi Qian nodded and walked through the crowd with Xia Jinyuan's help. In the crowd, Noah looked at Will, who suddenly walked quickly and disappeared from his sight. His expression was cold at first, then he laughed softly. "Mr. Will, you're really dishonest." Noah pressed down the hidden earpiece in his ear and heard his colleague say coldly, "He's really trying to get rid of us." Fortunately, the colonel is prepared. He's very smart. We can't be fooled by his temporary appearance when we're dealing with a smart person. We need to fully understand all his motives. Only then can we truly guard against all possibilities. Noah smiled faintly and looked at the entrance of the train station with murderous intent in his dark brown eyes. Amidst the noisy crowd, Noah said something in a low voice. His low voice was completely covered by the hustle and bustle of the surroundings. No one could hear what he said. The only thing they could see was that the smile on his face was colder and more ruthless than his eyes. It was a murderous intent that made people tremble. The three of them moved forward with difficulty in the crowd. After walking like this for nearly 10 minutes, Will found his informant, a local man in ordinary clothes from Melbourne. At this moment, he was anxiously sitting in the waiting seat, looking around. Sweat flowed down his cheeks like raindrops. Seeing this, Xia Jinyuan's eyes flashed with coldness. He said in a low voice, "Mr. Will, I feel that something is wrong now. Is there a problem here?" His voice was deep and ruthless, and he spoke close to Will. Will was so shocked that he suddenly lost his center of gravity and fell to the ground. He glanced around and tried his best not to let the mercenary in front of him hear the panic in his voice. He swallowed his throat and replied in a low voice, "It seems that something is wrong. You guys stay here first. I'll go and take a look alone." "Then be careful." Xia Jinyuan, whose eyes were gloomy, reminded him faintly. Suddenly, he added, "Mr. Will, we are in a cooperative relationship. As long as you can pay the price, we can do anything for you. You have no problem with money, and we have no problem with anything." Hearing this, Will clenched his fists and slowly released them. "I trust you. Please, trust me." Chapter 53:71. Xia Jinyuan nodded and put his arm around Yi Qian's shoulder. He pointed at one of the pillars that supported the main hall of the train station. There were small, blurry lenses attached to it. "Okay, I hope we can continue to work together happily. We'll wait for you here." Will nodded vigorously as he glanced at the pillar. He quickly pushed through the passing passengers and approached his informant. He looked around first. He asked in a low voice, "AI Bay, what happened to you? What happened?" AI Bay immediately burst into tears when he heard Will's question. "Mr. Will, I'm sorry." When Will saw Abe's sudden apology, his sharp eyes quickly scanned the crowded bus station. Suddenly, he saw a bald old man in the crowd running towards his direction. This person was none other than Cyril's staff officer who hosted the auction a few days ago, the old fox. There were 7 to 8 armed men around him, and they surrounded him together. Will's expression changed drastically when he heard AI Bay crying even more painfully. He understood that he did not blame AI Bay. Instead, he pulled AI Bay and ran towards the pillar where Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian were. "Mr. Will, I'm sorry. Please run. Don't worry about me. Just run." AI Bay struggled. He was only a young man in his early 20s. When he saw that Will did not give up after being threatened, he was ashamed and angry. He was ashamed of his own actions. If he had been braver just now, he could have directly faced Cyril's men and sacrificed his life to protect Mr. Will. Will, who was running desperately, had to hold on to AI Bay. He did not have time to talk. When he reached the two of them, he pushed AI Bay, who was still crying, over. "Take him and run quickly. Protect him. I'll lure the old fox and his men away." After he finished speaking, he ran in the opposite direction of Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. The two of them, who suddenly had an extra person beside them, saw Will running around. AI Bei, who was pushed to the side of a stranger, wanted to scream, but Xia Jinyuan quickly covered his mouth. Don't talk. You'll get killed. Her voice rushed to her throat, but she was scared back by the fierceness in the stranger's voice. Xia Jinyuan, who had carried out a mission in Melbourne, could speak the language of that country. AI Bei stopped struggling, and Xia Jinyuan let go of him. Let's go, he whispered to Yi Qian, and the two of them moved towards the exit of the train station with Abe in tow. They hadn't walked too far when 5 or 6 armed men appeared in front of them. They didn't see the target they were looking for. They held guns and charged arrogantly into the crowd. Seeing these guys holding guns, countless passengers and tourists quickly hid in the nearby shops, not daring to confront these guys. Xia Jinyuan handed AI Bei to Yi Qian and said in a deep voice, "Take him and go in another direction. I'll deal with those people. We'll meet at the hotel." After saying that, he took out his pistol and put on a silencer. Yi Qian grabbed Xia Jinyuan's hand. He did not agree with Xia Jinyuan's plan. There's no need for that. We can evacuate together. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Nothing can happen to Will yet. I need to help him now and gain his complete trust. He did not break free from Yi Qian's hand because he knew that his girl would give up on him. Yi Qian let go. Okay, I'll wait for you at the hotel. Chapter 53-72. As the captain, Xia Jinyuan had his own battle plans. Will was someone they needed to cooperate with. Even though Yi Qian knew that Xia Jinyuan's mission would be dangerous, as a combat personnel on a mission, she had to let him go. Outside, Noah saw people rushing out of the train station. He put his hands in his pockets and wiped the corners of his mouth with his fingers, revealing a confident smile. See, disobedient people don't have a good ending. Mr. Will, from the moment you chose to betray us, you're destined to have a bad ending. Colonel, they're looking for Will. Also, Cyril's men didn't find the mercenaries who went in with Will. A white man's voice came from the microphone into Noah's ears. Do you need our help? Noah chuckled casually. Of course, it's dangerous to let these guys out. Since we have time now, we can definitely deal with them. Be careful. Disguise yourselves as Cyril's subordinates. Don't let him find out. These mercenaries aren't as weak as you think. Of course, compared to them, these guys were still a little weak. Yes, Colonel. We'll definitely help Cyril. Several voices came from the headset. They were equally confident and confident. Soldiers from big countries always had a hint of arrogance that made them think they were stronger than others. In the train station, Cyril's subordinates didn't shoot directly. In such a concentrated area, no matter how bold Cyril was, he still had to be careful. If he really did that, he would have to face a lot of enemies. Noah's men entered the train station and began to look for Xia Jinyuan. Yi Qian's men came out of the station with AI Bei. She, G3, and Z7. There were no wireless communication devices, but there was a rendezvous point. During the retreat, Yi Qian contacted Z7, who had been watching Noah. Z7, who was watching closely, saw Noah's men entering the train station. Before he could inform Xia Jinyuan and G3, Yi Qian called. The two of them quickly arranged to meet at the rendezvous point and ended the call in 3 seconds. Z7 then quickly informed Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan was still running in an S shape in the crowd. All the tourists inside were running. Cyril's men did not notice him in advance, so they did not pay attention to a running figure. Upon receiving Z7's call, Xia Jinyuan's eyes turned cold. Noah wants to take advantage of the chaos to get rid of us and push all the blame onto Will. He wants Cyril to only focus on Will. This way, he can remove himself from the entire incident. Damn it, you single-handedly started the whole thing, and now you want to remove yourself from it completely. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Since they want to take advantage of the chaos to get rid of us, we can also take advantage of the chaos to get rid of them. I'll contact G3 and ask him to do things quickly. Xia Jinyuan was still running. He jumped down from the high platform and ran towards the front of the rows of parked locomotives. Will's running speed was unexpectedly fast. Fortunately, he caught up with him in time. Otherwise, he would have lost him in the train station. An eye for an eye, not bad. I'll keep an eye on Will. You guys take care of Noah's men. Xia Jinyuan did not mind giving Noah a hard time. Yi Qian escorted AI Bei out of the train station. Z7, who was in charge of the entire team's communications, immediately contacted G3. G3, who had been secretly following Noah's men, said coldly, "Don't worry. Even if we can't kill them both, we'll kill one of them." Chapter 53:73. It was all because of their schemes. There was no need to be angry. What was needed was strength. Strength was needed to crush the other party. Strength was needed to tell the other party that the consequences of underestimating others would be miserable. Z7, who was rushing to the rendezvous point with Yi Qian, laughed. "Brother, are you going to leave the other one alive for the new year? Kill him if you can. Don't think that we're easy to bully. I'm very humble. Keep an eye on the outside. See you later." G3, who had locked onto the target, had a good opportunity to make his move. He ended the call. Z7 looked at the busy tone of the phone and said in a low voice, "Brother, you have to be careful." He put the phone in his pocket and rushed to the rendezvous point. He looked around coldly. When he saw Yi Qian, Z7 immediately went up to him. The two of them quickly brought AI Bei to a safe place. Unfortunately, neither of them spoke Mola's language, and AI Bei didn't speak English. Z7 immediately called Bai He to solve the problem. Bai He was on the way to the train station. The chaos had started. Xia Jinyuan called G3, and G3 immediately called Z7. Then, Z7 called Bai He. Mobile phones were the tools they used to communicate with each other. In the train station, Xia Jinyuan, who had been chasing after Will, passed through the most crowded crowd and entered the train station. Other than the rows of train cars, it was difficult to find a single passenger. Even if there was a figure, it was the staff of the train station. Xia Jinyuan took care of one of the robbers. Before he could move, another robber came out from the side of the train with a gun. Xia Jinyuan, who was holding a pistol with a silencer, quickly fired at the robber's chest. There was a muffled sound like a bubble rising from deep water. The robber fell to the ground with a large amount of blood oozing out of his chest. He was shot in the heart and died on the spot. Xia Jinyuan didn't let the robber fall to the ground. He dragged the dead robber and pushed him under the tracks of the train car. Then, he quickly approached the robber. These robbers stood alone like whistles. Then, he quickly moved to the junction of the two carriages and aimed at another robber who was following the sound. When the robber got closer and closer, he aimed at his head and fired. The sound of the silencer was so soft that sometimes it couldn't be heard clearly if one didn't listen carefully. Sometimes, even if one heard it, one wouldn't think it was a gunshot. Only those who used guns often could tell. Xia Jinyuan, who had been left behind by Cyril's men, was in the dark. Xia Jinyuan, as the captain. Xia Jinyuan, after he killed several robbers. Xia. The guy who came over was very cautious. He took 2 steps and stopped again. It took him 5 minutes to walk from the front of the carriage to the back. 1, 2, 3. Move. He took a big stride forward and hit the robber's chin with his elbow. Then, he quickly moved to the side and gently cut the robber's neck with a knife in his left hand. The dagger, which always had the sharpest edge, turned into a cold light and brushed past the robber's neck. His speed was too fast. He cut the robber's throat and cut the artery. Blood spurted out like water from a high-pressure water gun and splashed all over Xia Jinyuan's right shoulder. Chapter 53:74. The person who was stabbed fell to the ground and convulsed. He did not even have time to cover his neck. Blood spurted out of his mouth like rain as his body leaned toward the carriage. A moment later, he breathed his last. His pupils, which had not yet dilated, were full of horror. He thought he was fine, but he did not even have the chance to scream or be afraid before the Grim Reaper took him away. These were all Cyril's subordinates. They looked very strong when they pointed their guns at civilians, but in the hands of the special forces, they were nothing. There were also powerful people in the Melbourne underworld. Otherwise, they would not have dared to fight with the government. But obviously, the robber that Xia Jinyuan killed was a small fry. He did not need to spend too much effort and only needed to be careful to deal with him. Just as Xia Jinyuan pushed the robber into the track, several horrifying screams came from the front. Xia Jinyuan's face suddenly darkened. He did not even bother to wipe the blood off his face and quickly looked for the source of the screams. He was a little too late. The Melbourne underworld, who dared to kill the police, picked up the guns in their hands and fired wildly at the 10 or so railway station staff. Suddenly, the whole carriage was filled with screams and blood flowed all over the floor. These were the railway station staff who were taking care of all the train cars. When they saw these armed robbers, they were so scared that they all hid in a section of the carriage that happened to be open. They did not expect that a hammer that a colleague had casually carried would accidentally fall and make a clang sound, which would kill all of them. Xia Jinyuan, who had stopped in his tracks, felt as if his heart had been hit by a boulder. The anger in his chest was rampaging, and it was heavy and painful. The people who had finished shooting got out of the carriage one by one. Xia Jinyuan glanced at them. There were a total of 3 of them. As he approached along the track, he heard the voice that he had heard at the auction a few days ago. It was full of violence. Son of a b****, do you know what you have done? Do you know? I think you are tired of living. How dare you quibble in front of me? Don't think that just because your brother died to save Cyril, you can do whatever you want. Tell me, where did you hide them? Hand them all over. For the sake of your brother and your honesty, I will plead with Cyril to spare your life. Bastard, this is your last chance. The bald-headed man yelled angrily at Will, kicking and scolding him. To Xia Jinyuan's surprise, this guy actually knew Will. Will's brother had even saved Cyril before. Will, who was beaten until his body curled up, clenched his teeth. Even if his face was bruised and his mouth swollen, he didn't say anything. The bald man flew into a rage. You damn son of a bitch, are you trying to betray us? Beat him until he opens his mouth. If he still doesn't open his mouth, just greet him with bullets. Hearing the sounds, Xia Jinyuan slowly retreated. Then he picked up the rifle of one of the targets that had been destroyed, took out the magazine, and looked at it. With a click, he put it back and moved forward again. Then, he nimbly climbed to the top of the train carriage and slowly crept forward until he could quickly kill the targets. He raised his gun, aimed, and pulled the trigger. The continuous gunshots sounded like fireworks exploding. Bang, 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 bang. The bullets swept across, and none of them missed their mark. The first to fall was not the minions, but the bald man. Xia Jinyuan had shot a hole in the back of his head. Chapter 5375. A dazzling red flower blossomed on the back of the bald man's head, and in just a few seconds, Cyril's renowned advisor had already collapsed onto the ground. Even in the moment of his death, he didn't know how he had died. The bald man fell to the ground. The bandits who were in charge of keeping an eye on the surroundings heard the gunshot and fell before they could react. 2 of the bandits reacted quickly and immediately dodged to the side to fight back. Xia Jinyuan had no intention of letting these bandits, who were only following orders and had no opinions of their own, off the hook. Will, who was curled up on the ground, did not know what had happened. When the gunshot rang out, he hugged his head and waited for a bullet to hit him. In the end, he was not shot. The bastards who had attacked him fell one by one. Finally, the surroundings were so quiet that he could hear the sound of the wind. It was so quiet that he did not dare to open his eyes. After about 2 minutes, Xia Jinyuan, who had been waiting for a long time, could not wait any longer. He walked over to Will, lowered his eyes, and coldly looked at him. You can come out now. How long do you want to stay on the ground? Are you going to lie there until the sun sets? When he heard Xia Jinyuan's voice, Will, who was in disbelief, let go of his hands and lay on the ground, staring blankly. In the end, it was Xia Jinyuan who reached out to pull him up. Will, who was in so much pain that he kept gasping for air, suddenly panicked and hurriedly looked around. When he saw the bald man lying in a pool of blood, Will's face turned pale. When he looked at Xia Jinyuan, even his eyes were trembling. You killed him. You killed him. He was so scared that he was stuttering. Xia Jinyuan did not seem to realize that he was scared. Instead, he deliberately misinterpreted his words and said coldly, "If it wasn't me, did you think that Jesus came to save you?" His expression was very relaxed, but Will wasn't relaxed at all. His face was as pale as a sheet of ash. You lunatic, you lunatic. I think Cyril is going to go completely insane now. You've destroyed all of his brain power. There's no way he's going to let you off the hook. He won't let me go. Mr. Will, before he dies, will Cyril let you go? I don't think so. All right. Mr. Will, I think we should cut the crap and leave quickly. I've already handed your men over to my brother. Do you need to see him? Xiao Jinyuan's cold voice rang in Will's ears again. Will, who was so scared that he didn't even have the strength to take a step forward, fell silent. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. Cyril wouldn't let him go. Baldy wouldn't let him go either. Now that Baldy was dead, at least he was still alive. At least he was still alive. It was this very powerful mercenary in front of him, whom he had spent a lot of money to hire, who had saved him. Thank you, he said in a hoarse voice. Cyril had kidnapped Alice Chung. He knew that Cyril would not let him off so easily. He knew. He had always known. It was just that he was unwilling to face it. He only wanted to escape. Now everything was fine. Finally, there was no need to escape. It was finally time to face it. Although Will was still scared and his face was still pale, at least he could walk on his own. He said to Xia Jinyuan, "We have to find a way to get rid of all these guys. Do you have any good ideas?" Chapter 5376. Xia Jinyuan was the most familiar with dealing with crime scenes. While he was dealing with it, Noah outside was furious. No, he wasn't mad. He was furious. Because of his anger, his facial features were distorted, and he still had to take care of his surroundings. He also had to keep his voice down. His left hand spread open like the claws of a dragon. He roared again and again. "Find them. Don't let any of them go. Don't let any of them go. This group of damned bastards. Kill them all." After 2 of his soldiers entered the train station, they were killed. They were killed by their guns. They didn't even know who killed them. Was it a few mercenaries? Now, these mercenaries were nowhere to be seen. None of his soldiers were able to catch up with them. Was it them? No. Impossible. Even if they were powerful, his soldiers were even more powerful. How could they be secretly killed by a few mercenaries? The rest of the soldiers who were searching nearby didn't notice them at all. Were they Cyril's subordinates? Was it this damn thing? Noah had been in Melibon for so long, and this was the first time he tasted failure. Moreover, this failure was one that he thought was impossible. 2 of his soldiers had been killed. This was undoubtedly a blow to Noah's head. He couldn't accept it for a while. His soldiers were there to deal with the dangerous mercenaries, not to be killed by others. Not to be killed by others. The furious Noah didn't even think about how to pretend to be Cyril's subordinates, to kill Xia Jinyuan and the others in this mess. He needed to find the real murderer who killed his soldiers. G3, who made the confident Noah angry, had already come out of the train station. Z7 received a 2-word message from him. Become a pair. Z7 raised his eyebrows when he saw the message. He sent a message to Yi Qian and Bai He. T6, K7, and V8, who were still in the hotel, could go back and talk about it later. The White Crane had arrived. He could speak the language of Melibon. The moment he opened his mouth, AI Bay, whose eyes were red and swollen from crying, rushed over and grabbed the White Crane's hand excitedly, as if he had seen a long-lost relative. He spoke incoherently like a string of firecrackers. Yi Qian, who only knew 2 languages, had no way of understanding him. Judging from his body language, he was probably worried about Will. Although he said a lot, he only translated the most important sentence to Yi Qian. He said that he needed to find a phone and asked us not to follow him. Yi Qian shook his head. Tell him that's impossible. He couldn't leave alone until Will arrived. This is for the sake of his safety. He translated honestly, and AI Bay became even more agitated after hearing it. He straightened his neck until his veins could be seen bulging. No, you can't. I have to make the call. This was very important. Very, very important. You can make a call, but we need to follow you. He was calm and prevented him from escaping. It was obvious that AI Bay was in a hurry to make the call. The more they restrained him, the more he would want to escape. We have a better solution. You make the call, and we'll stand nearby and stay away from you. How about that? If you accept, we'll send you there immediately. If you don't, the two of us will keep an eye on you. You won't have a chance to escape. Bai's suggestion made AI Bei feel tempted, and he nodded in agreement. Chapter 53:77. AI Bei couldn't refuse. He knew very well that he couldn't escape from the two in front of him, so he could only accept. After accepting, AI Bei said a few more words. Yi Qian, who didn't know what he said, looked at Bai He and waited for Bai He to translate. He said that he won't make the call here. He's in another place and needs to walk there in about 10 minutes. Bai He frowned slightly. That place is very safe. It was safe for AI Bei, but it might not be safe for Yi Jian and Bai He. But since he promised AI Bei, he naturally had to go there. At this time, the train station was not as lively as it was half an hour ago. The large square was empty, and no one walked by. The fleeing pedestrians all left the train station and fled to a safe place. The police, who arrived late, were fully armed and carrying shields. They ran all the way through the empty square and into the train station. The scene inside the station was completely different. During the escape, there was a stampede. Several passengers were trampled by the crowd behind them, and there were already casualties. The police began to clean up the scene. The exasperated Noah didn't stay any longer. The police were already here. Even if he wanted to find the murderer who killed his 2 soldiers, he had to leave at this moment. When he said retreat, his dark brown eyes were filled with unwillingness. From his long and thin profile, one could clearly see that he had been clenching his jaw and leaving with a gloomy expression. There were still many cars parked on the side of the road. Some of the cars even had their doors open. It was obvious that the car owners were in a panic. Yi Jian and Bai He led AI Bei through the streets and disappeared at the corner of the street in no time. On the other side, G3 and Z7 met up and high-fived to celebrate. Xia Jinyuan and Will cleaned up the scene and avoided Cyril's subordinates who hadn't left yet. Their journey was very smooth. On the other side, AI Bei led the way. After crossing 2 streets, they entered a commercial street full of local specialties. The street wasn't wide, but it was full of Melbourne's characteristics. It wasn't affected by the gunfight at the train station, and people came and went. Yi Qian even saw a street artist playing and singing. His passionate songs attracted many people, and the guitar box in front of him was filled with banknotes of different denominations. Here, there was no danger. Everything that entered one's eyes made one feel relaxed, and one couldn't help but smile. AI Bei, whose body had been tense all this time, finally relaxed after entering this place. A smile even appeared on his tear-stained face. Walking past 2 small stalls that looked like carts, he ran his fingers over the little silver bells hanging on the stalls. He suddenly asked the white crane, "Well, Mr. will be all right?" After asking, he immediately retracted his gaze from the white crane and secretly rubbed his fingers uneasily. Bai smiled and said, "He'll be fine. We are all bodyguards that he hired to protect him. We'll be fine." Hearing that Mr. would be fine, Abe's eyes lit up. Really? But he thought of something and his eyes dimmed again. Bai He and Yi Qian exchanged glances secretly. Bai He smiled like a big brother next door and asked, "But what? You can tell us." "Cyril, he won't let Mr. Will off so easily. He still needs Mr. Will's cargo ship to deliver his goods." Abe's expression became anxious again. "You are Mr. Will's bodyguards. Will you always protect him?" Chapter 53:78. Cargo ship delivery? The white crane nodded and replied solemnly, "Of course. Of course, we will protect Mr. Will. Wherever Mr. Will goes, we will follow him." Cyril kidnapped Alice Chung to threaten Will into delivering goods for him. However, Will did not confess during the conversation. He even told them that he did not know Cyril at all. In fact, they knew each other, and Alice Cheng's kidnapping was entirely because of Will. Since Will did not confess, they had to be more careful of him in the future cooperation. Yi Qian pursed his lips slightly. He thought that Xia Jinyuan, who was with Will now, should have escaped. AI Bei's voice came into his ears. Yi Qian saw him pointing to a small and dirty accessory shop in front of them. It sold some local ethnic trinkets in Melbourne and said something to buy he. The place in front is where he called. He asked us to wait for him on the other side. He also said that he was very familiar with this place and that it was very safe. He will be fine. Bai he translated and told Yi Qian. Yi Qian looked around and said in a low voice, he can't be too far away. Since Cyril's people used him to lure Will to the train station, there's no guarantee that he didn't arrange for someone to watch AI Bai's usual activities. Bai nodded slightly. They could not let AI Bai be too far away from their line of sight. It was better to be nearby. An unfamiliar ringtone sounded. Both of them looked at AI Bai. AI Bai took out his phone and said excitedly after looking at it, "It's Mr. Will. It's Mr. Will." It was a joy that came from the bottom of his heart, as well as a deep attachment. Yi Qian's phone also rang. It was Xia Jinyuan. Hearing the familiar low voice from the phone, Yi Qian's cold expression turned into a spring breeze. "How's the situation? Is everyone safe?" She asked with a smile. "You can personally confirm whether I'm safe or not." Xia Jinyuan answered slowly with a smile on his handsome face. "We're here to look for you now. Will wants to meet AI Bai. Where is it?" On the other side, Abe was dancing as he told Will where he was. After ending the call, he laughed heartily. "Hey, Mr. Will said that he's safe now. He also said that he'll come and meet me immediately. I'm so happy that Mr. Will is fine." It was indeed something to be happy about. Yi Qian saw the man who reeked of blood but was not injured walking over. She smiled until he came closer. Will walked even faster. Seeing that AI Bai was completely fine, he patted AI Bai's shoulder. "You're still alive today, so you need to thank them the most. Without them, you would have been killed by Cyril's men." The fact that AI Bai was fine made Will even more confident in the abilities of the mercenaries he hired. After asking AI Bai to bow and thank Yi Qian and the others, he said to Xia Jinyuan, "I need to be alone with AI Bai for a while. You guys can walk around nearby. Mr. Will, you just got out of danger." "Are you sure you won't be in danger again?" Xia Jinyuan asked him. "Cyril has his eyes on you. His men might be at the places you frequent." Will's expression changed several times at the mention of this. Feeling AI Bai quietly tugging at his sleeve, Will gritted his teeth. "I won't go too far. I'll be back soon." Xia Jinyuan did not answer immediately. He stared at Will for a while with a slightly cold gaze. Will's expression became very unnatural. Then, the corners of Xia Jinyuan's mouth curled up. "Okay, we got it. Since he trusted AI Bai so much, what did it have to do with them?" Chapter 5379. To be honest, whether Will was in trouble or not had nothing to do with the eight of them. They already knew what they needed to know. Since they insisted on talking alone despite the danger, it seemed like there was a secret more important than their lives. Looking at the two of them leaving, Xia Jinyuan said coldly, "I just killed Cyril's military counselor. Next, Cyril's people will definitely look for Will. Will may cooperate with Noah again, or he may choose to cooperate with us to deal with Noah and save Alice Chung. Will is not trustworthy." Yi Qian analyzed calmly. He wavered and hid many key points. He knows Cyril, but he kept telling us that he doesn't know Cyril. Maybe even Noah was fooled. We need to doubt everything he said. I don't believe that he will choose to cooperate with us. You killed Cyril's bald man. Will may really cooperate with Noah. He may even take the initiative to tell Cyril that we killed the bald man. After saying that, Xia Jinyuan reached out and rubbed the top of his head. "Don't forget, we are mercenaries hired by Will. Everything we do is related to Will. He won't turn around and surrender to Cyril. As for choosing to cooperate with Noah again, this is possible. But will Noah believe him? It's difficult. As a businessman, Will knows very well. On the contrary, he will be more satisfied and believe us. Because on the way here, Will told me that Noah has been threatening his family. He wants us to get rid of Noah so that his family will no longer be threatened by Noah. As for Cyril, he said that he is willing to cooperate and let Cyril think that the person who killed the bald man is Noah. On one side is a person who threatens the safety of his family, and on the other side is a mercenary he hired at high price. As an expert, Will is more willing to trust the mercenaries he hired. Will led Abe through the streets. He seemed to be worried that Xia Jinyuan and the others would follow them, so he turned his head to look around vigilantly. Seeing that the mercenaries he hired were all standing there obediently, Will heaved a sigh of relief. In front of them, there was a child who was about 10 years old. He was carrying a cloth bag and holding a tree branch. He was squatting on the ground and drawing something that no one could understand. He was drawing very seriously and was completely immersed in his own world. The two of them had just passed by the child when the child, who had been scribbling on the ground, stood up. Yi Qian, who had been staring at the child, suddenly narrowed her eyes. Then, she and her comrades rushed out at almost the same time. "Get down! Get down!" Xia Jinyuan shouted. The child took out a black object from his satchel and pointed it at Abe, who was passing by him. Will vaguely heard Xia Jinyuan's voice, but the environment was too lively, and there was also heavy metal music. He just tilted his head slightly and continued talking to Abe. Bang! There was a sound behind him. Will saw Abe, who was walking and talking to him, suddenly stop, and then his face became extremely pained. Another low bang was heard. Will suddenly realized something and subconsciously reached out to support Abe, who was falling forward. "Abe! Abe!" he roared. Abe, who had been shot twice in the back, fell down. Blood gushed out and instantly soaked his clothes. Chapter 5380. From the moment AI Bei was discovered to the moment he fell, the entire process took less than 5 seconds. No matter how fast Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian, and Bai He reacted, they were still separated by a street full of pedestrians. Even if they took out their guns, they couldn't stop the little boy from shooting. AI Bei, who had been shot twice, fell to the ground. Lying in a pool of blood, his body twitched and blood gushed out of his mouth. He apologized to Will until Will forgave him with red eyes and tears flowing down his face. AI Bei, who was still bleeding from the corner of his mouth, smiled. His lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something, but his voice was so weak that Will couldn't hear what he was saying even if he put his mouth to his ear. Maybe he wanted to say something important, or maybe he wanted to say something about his weariness in life. But everything seemed to be irreversible. In less than a minute, AI Bei stopped moving. AI Bei! AI Bei! Will held the bleeding AI Bei in his arms and screamed at the top of his lungs. Bai He rushed over and grabbed the boy, who was running away like a slippery eel, and slashed the back of the boy's neck. The boy, who was struggling to escape, felt a sharp pain in the back of his neck. He closed his eyes and fell limp in Bai's hands. He grabbed the boy's collar like an eagle grabbing a chick and brought him to Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan looked at the boy, who was only 8 or 9 years old, but was extremely skilled in shooting and killing. His dark eyes were filled with coldness. "Look at him." "Yes." Bai nodded and turned the boy to the side. Yi Qian was in charge of guarding the surroundings to prevent anyone from shooting at them. Xia Jinyuan, who was half-squatting, stroked AI Bei's round eyes, which were filled with longing for the world. "Mr. Will, we need to talk somewhere else." The shooting just now didn't cause much of a commotion. The passers-by didn't even know that they had just been shot, and that a young life had left the world forever with longing for the world. Will didn't leave immediately. He held AI Bei's body, which was still warm. His hands were stained with blood, and there was even sticky blood dripping between his fingers. Will looked at Xia Jinyuan and said, "Q, let's work together." His eyes were very cold, and there was even a hint of desperation. Xia Jinyuan looked back at him and did not immediately choose to believe his words. He stared coldly at Will, who had proposed to cooperate with him. After a while, the corners of his mouth twitched coldly, revealing a cold and emotionless smile. "I've always thought that we were cooperating, but now it seems that Mr. Will is not." "No, you're right. We've always been working together." Will picked up AI Bei. It was obvious that he was struggling, but he didn't ask Xia Jinyuan for help. He only asked Xia Jinyuan to help him put AI Bei's arm on his shoulder. Xia Jinyuan helped him and Will sincerely apologized. "Thank you, Q. I need to send this child home now. If you have time, please come with me. From now on, we will settle your employment fees on a daily basis. I know your employment fees are very high, but please rest assured that I have enough ability to pay. Xia Yuan, whose eyes were slightly fixed, didn't follow Will. Instead, he stood behind him and asked calmly, Alice Chung is in Noah's hands now, right? This time, Will didn't hide anything and answered Xia Yuan, yes, she's in Noah's hands. She knows Noah, but she begged me to save her. Her child is also in Noah's hands. Chapter 53:81. Will's footsteps were heavy as he walked forward. Every step he took felt like he was carrying 1,000 pounds of weight. His tall back was shrouded in sadness. Anyone who saw him would know that this was a man who was grieving. He was very familiar with this place. He did not walk through the crowded streets. Instead, he walked along the bumpy alleyway to the top. It was a slope. Looking at the top of the alleyway from the side of the street, it was at least 40 degrees. Every step Will took was extremely strenuous. Yi Qian, who was following behind him, even saw him lose his balance a few times. He looked like he was going to fall backward. Dark red blood dripped all the way, meandering upwards. It was a ghastly sight. Yi Qian lowered his head slightly and quietly followed behind by He, who was carrying the boy. Xia Yuan followed behind Will. Bai He was in the middle, and Yi Qian was in the middle. After walking for at least half an hour, Will stopped outside a house with mottled exterior walls. It was obvious that it was at the bottom of the Melabon Peninsula. He did not need to press the doorbell. There was no doorbell to press. He lifted his foot and gently pushed the iron door that was so rusty that he could rub it with his hand. The iron door creaked open. Will carried Ai Bei, whose limbs were getting stiffer and stiffer, and walked in. Xia Yuan turned back to look at his comrade behind him. He nodded slightly before walking in. The bungalow was a long and narrow house. Standing in front of the door, one could see the door at the back of the house. Someone inside heard the noise and quickly ran out of the dimly lit room. It was too dark, and one could vaguely see that it was a middle-aged woman whose figure was out of shape. Mr. Will, is that you? The middle-aged woman who ran out saw Will. Perhaps because Will was carrying someone in his arms, she was a little uncertain. Her tone was very respectful. Will responded in a low voice. His voice was so choked that the middle-aged woman who was walking out quickly stopped. She must have sensed something. She stood there and did not move another step. In the dark room, the figure did not move for a long time. The atmosphere was so tense that Yi Qian could not breathe. She was a middle-aged woman in her 40s with white hair. Her hands were rough and her joints were thick. One could tell at a glance how hard life was for her. She watched Will walk to her side step by step. Her frozen gaze finally fell on the person Will was hugging. Her lips trembled slightly, and she asked in the local language, "Who are you hugging?" Abe. Will opened his mouth. His suppressed sorrow filled the room like a tide. Abe, he's dead, isn't he? He's dead, isn't he? The middle-aged woman's voice was too soft. It was so soft that it was like a bubble floating in the air. It would disappear with a light touch. Will did not answer. His silence was the best answer. How did he die? Can you tell me? What happened, Mr. Will? Can you tell me all about it? The middle-aged woman reached out with trembling hands. She wanted to hug her child. This was her child. She could not carry Abe. Her voice was filled with sorrow as she begged Will to carry Abe to the bed. Just as he placed the pale-faced Ai Bei on the bed, the sound of laughter and chatter came from outside the cramped bungalow. It was the voices of two men. One of the men was already shouting at the door before he even walked in, shouting all the way in. Chapter 53:82. Two men walked in together. Bai He, who was still holding the little boy, looked at the man on the left. This was the master of the house, and the shorter one was the friend. The master of the house realized that there were strangers in his house. Just as he was about to ask them who they were, he heard his wife sobbing. His expression changed, and he rushed into the room. However, he suddenly stopped outside the door and did not go in again. Mr. Will, he said happily, his voice full of respect. God, you've been. Why do I smell blood? The master of the house stepped into the room with only a small lamp on. He saw his son, Ai Bei, lying motionless on the bed. He did not finish his sentence. and the air became dead silent. A few minutes later, the master of the house exploded. Didn't you say that you would protect him well? Didn't you say you would protect him well? Ah, why? Why is my child gone? Why? The man grabbed Will's collar and questioned him over and over again. At this moment, he no longer treated Will as his breadwinner, but as his enemy who killed his son. Xia Jinyuan whispered to Yi Qian, "Let's go outside first and wait for him to settle the matter." Will brought them here to tell Xia Jinyuan how sincere he was about their cooperation. Bai looked at the little boy who was still being strangled. "What about him? Did you hand him over?" "Keep strangling him." Xia Jinyuan glanced at the little boy who was still unconscious. It was obvious that Bai was a little harsh. There was no way that she wasn't harsh. The little boy was not even an adult, yet he killed without batting an eye. Bai naturally would not show mercy. The sound of a one-sided fight came from inside. Yi Qian could tell that it was a fist hitting another person. He couldn't help but ask Xia Jinyuan carefully, "Should we go in and guard? Will they beat Will to death?" Xia Jinyuan shook his head. He put an arm around Yi Qian's shoulder and stood under the sun. "No, we'll dare to send AI Bei here himself. He has to have the courage to bear the consequences. AI Bei is the child of this family. Now that AI Bei is gone, Will has to take full responsibility." When they suggested that they should follow closely, Abe secretly signaled for Will to refuse. Will hesitated for a few seconds and finally chose to refuse. In the end, their choice was to let Abe die under the gun of a little boy. The short man pulled the owner away and pulled Will to the back of the house. He asked Will in a serious tone what had happened and why Abe, who had gone out in the morning, had suddenly died. Will, who was punched in the face, did not fight back. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and answered the short man. "Cyril's men threatened Abe. After Abe escaped, he met me. A kid who was playing on the side of the road suddenly shot at Abe." As he explained, the sadness he revealed made the short man unable to scold him, especially when he learned that Abe had brought Cyril's men to surround Will. The short man instantly fell silent. "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." The short man bowed to Mr. Will in a Melibonian way and walked back to the house that was similar to his own. About 10 minutes later, the little boy who had been grabbed by the white crane finally woke up. This was a little boy who had undergone special training. The moment he opened his eyes, a ferocious light burst out from his clear black and white glass-like eyes. He roared at the white crane and even lifted his leg to kick the white crane's crotch. Chapter 5383. These specially trained boys were the most inhumane and cruel characteristic of the evil forces in Melbourne. They liked to find children to feed on raw meat and train them from a young age. Xia Jinyuan had seen this kind of little boy at Carbeo's place before. They looked very ordinary, so ordinary that they looked no different from ordinary children. In fact, these little boys knew how to use knives when they were very young. They started from killing rats and slowly moved on to killing rabbits, cats, dogs, and other animals. They grew up with hands full of blood until they knew how to use guns to kill people. They had completely become killing machines in the hands of these evil forces. The struggling boy in Bai's hands was a killing machine. There was no color in his world, only the color of blood. He only did one thing every day: kill people. Seeing the cruelty in the boy's eyes, Bai frowned slightly. "Let's hand him over to the police." A few years ago, the police rescued 2 boys from somewhere and sent them to an orphanage. Later, the 12 children who slept in the same room as the 2 boys were all killed in their sleep. They snuck into the orphanage's kitchen and stole 2 thin knives used to cut meat. "Let's hand them over to the police. The police might send them to the orphanage." After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, Yi Qian felt a chill run down his spine. "Then what should we do?" "Let's hand them over to Will." Xia Jinyuan replied calmly. "He killed AI Bei. Will handle it. We don't have to get involved." Yi Qian was silent. If they handed them over to Will, would the boy still have a chance to live? You haven't seen them kill people. If you have, you'll realize that killing people is as simple as eating a meal for them. Xia Jinyuan could see that Yi Qian was silent and couldn't bear to do it. If it was an adult man, Yi Qian wouldn't have any objections. But now it was a little boy, a child who was still acting spoiled in front of his parents. He still had a long way to go and should be full of sunshine. Wrong. She was wrong. These boys were destined to have a bloody life from the beginning of their training. There would be no sunshine in their lives. Don't even think about using education to change them. Their nature has already changed since they were young. Letting them out would only cause more people to die in their hands. In the end, the little boy was handed over to Will. Xia Jinyuan looked at the haggard Will and asked him, although he didn't want to see this ending, now that it has happened, what's your plan? If Cyril can kill Abe today, he can kill you tomorrow. Will looked at the unconscious murderer and said in a hoarse voice, I need to bury Abe first. You guys go back to the hotel first. I'll come find you after I'm done. After a slight pause, he asked again, now, can you believe my sincerity in cooperating with you? Xia Jinyuan stared at him for a while and shook his head. No, we can't talk about trust now. Let's settle AI Bay's matter first, and then we can talk about it in detail. I want to remind Mr. Will that we just arrived in Melbourne. Mr. Will told us very seriously that Melbourne is very messy and the environment is very complicated. We can't relax at any time. Mr. Will, you relax today. I'm glad that you've already paid me all the previous commissions. Will smiled bitterly. I know, it's my fault this time. You guys go back to the hotel first. I'll come find you. Chapter 53:84. The three of them did not stay any longer. They returned to the place where Abe was shot and met up with G3 and Z7. The five of them split into two taxis and returned to the hotel. When they arrived at the hotel, they entered T6's room, where K7 and V8 were waiting. When the three of them saw that their comrades who had gone out to fight had returned, they heaved a sigh of relief. As soon as the door closed, T6 asked, What's going on? We saw the news on TV just now. The train station is in a mess, and there are countless casualties. Before Xia Jinyuan could speak, Z7, who already knew the whole story, said in a deep voice, one of Will's informants was killed by Cyril. Cyril and Will know each other, so Will intends to cooperate with us. As for whether he'll kill Cyril or Noah, it's still undecided. The situation is getting more and more serious, and it's quite disadvantageous for us. Cyril has already noticed us. Q King, we need to discuss this carefully and come up with a plan to get out of Cyril's sight. We can't just sit around and wait for death. We have to take the initiative to attack. At the same time, we have to think of a way to disturb the guy at the hotel and make him think that Cyril secretly killed his men. Only then will we have a chance to save Alice Chung and deal a fatal blow to Noah. In any case, Cyril was not their target. Noah was. Do we need to inform Will before the operation? What's he doing now? Why didn't he come back with you guys? T6 asked Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan, who was unscrewing the cap of a mineral water bottle, looked up and saw T6 looking at him. He handed the unscrewed mineral water bottle to Yi Qian and replied calmly, He's dealing with some matters. He'll come to the hotel later. Let's plan our own plan first. Let's all sit closer together. Let's talk about what you guys think first. Hearing this, his comrades gathered around him. Z7, whose face was slightly gloomy, was the first to express his opinion. According to what we've just said, since Cyril has already noticed us, I think we should strike first to gain the upper hand. We should think of a way to control Cyril first. Then, we'll see if we can get any clues from Cyril. He focused on Cyril, who was a danger to them. Yi Qian did not agree. Just as he was about to speak, he heard V8 say in a deep voice, Your thoughts coincide with mine. Instead of waiting for him to come to us, why don't we get rid of this hidden danger first to avoid any more trouble? Either we don't do it this time, or we have to do it cleanly. We can't be like before and let others take advantage of us for nothing. He was referring to the fact that Alice Chung had fallen into Noah's hands after he had saved her with great difficulty. This time, the T6 combatant did not speak first. It was clear that he had different opinions about his two comrades. G3 said, I have an idea. Do you think it's feasible? Isn't Cyril already suspicious of us? In that case, he'll definitely find out about the hotel we're staying at soon. Besides, hasn't the hotel not been touched yet? He paused for a moment and looked around at everyone. When he saw a hint of interest in Xia Jinyuan's eyes, he slowly continued. Can we lure Cyril over and let him fight with Noah in the hotel? In the end, we'll be the third party to reap the benefits. It's the same as Q King's original plan. The only difference is that we need to lure Cyril to the hotel. Of the three comrades' opinions, Yi Qian was more inclined to agree with G3. Luring him to the hotel was indeed a good idea. Chapter 5385. The hotel was Noah's territory, so Yi Qian felt that it was feasible to make use of Cyril to destroy Noah's place while he was at it. Given Cyril's character of paying people back tenfold for every loss he suffered, it should be easy for him to destroy a hotel. T6 agreed this time. He was also leaning towards G3's plan. G3's idea is very good. We can kill two birds with one stone. He voiced his thoughts. Cyril is not our ultimate target, so there's no need to face him head-on. This is Melibon, and Cyril has a lot of power. There are only 8 of us, and we've already let him know. It's too dangerous to kill Cyril first. K7, who was acting like a wallflower, said, G3 sure. V8 and Z7 nodded at the same time. Then we'll have to plan carefully how to make Cyril take the initiative to throw himself at Noah in the hotel. Xia Jinyuan revealed a cold smile. He was a captain who listened to the opinions of his comrades and encouraged them to speak their minds. Only then would they have a better understanding of each other. G3's idea was also a key to his cooperation with Will. Here, they needed Will to step in. There's a place we can make good use of. Will brought us to this place before, Yi Qian said slyly. The auction house. That's right. How could I have forgotten such an important clue? Based on what Will told us, the auction house is one of Cyril's main sources of income, so he must place great importance on it. If we blow up that place for him, how do you think Cyril will react? V8 clapped his hands and laughed. This time, we'll be in the dark while Will brings Noah over. Wouldn't that be great? Needless to say, he'll definitely come looking for us in exasperation. T6 smiled with a scheming expression. Didn't Will want to cooperate with us? Sure, his sincerity lies in his desire to let Cyril meet Noah. That's right. This is the effect we want. Next, let's see them fight each other. Will plays a key role in our plan. We need to have a good chat with him. He wants to get rid of Noah and Cyril more than we do. I'm afraid he doesn't want to stay in Melbourne anymore. His comrades spoke one after another. There was not a trace of nervousness or fear on their faces. There was only calmness, and wisdom. They would plan according to the changes of the day, not allowing the slightest bit of disclosure. When it was necessary to take the initiative to attack, they would never back down. When it was necessary to withdraw their edge, they would definitely carefully hide themselves well and not reveal any traces. Yi Qian felt that every time she fought alongside her comrades, she would improve in all aspects. After more than an hour of debate, discussion, and practice, the members of the Snowfield Brigade finally worked out a strategy to kill 2 birds with one stone. After the division of labor was clear, every member of the Snowfield Brigade started to act in an orderly manner. Most importantly, Will also arrived at the hotel at night. He had sneaked into the hotel without Noah noticing him. However, Noah did not have the time to monitor Will at this time. 2 of his soldiers had been killed, so he needed to deal with the aftermath. Noah was also carrying out his mission, but some of his soldiers were sacrificed when he finally pulled in the net. They wanted to retrieve the train station surveillance footage, but the local police did not want to escalate the matter and destroyed all the surveillance footage. There was no possibility of even repairing it. Noah, who suspected both the mercenaries and Cyril, had the worst day since he entered Melbourne. Chapter 5386. Will contacted Xia Jinyuan at around 11 o'clock in the evening. To be safe and not to be discovered by Noah, Will proposed to meet outside the hotel. Xia Jinyuan gladly agreed. Inside the hotel, T6, V8, and K7 continued to keep a close watch. Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian, Bai He, and G3 left the hotel. After the meeting, Will confessed to Xia Jinyuan about his relationship with Noah. He also told Xia Jinyuan that his family was threatened by Noah's men. Therefore, he was forced to do certain things and could not resist. As for why Alice Chung knew Noah, Will was silent for a long time before answering. That night, when I found out that Alice knew Noah, I was more shocked than anyone else. I felt like I had been deceived and played like a fool by my friends. I even let my family be threatened. It wasn't until Alice angrily accused Noah of not keeping his word in the car that I found out that she was also forced. Her child is still in Noah's hands. If she doesn't listen to Noah's arrangements, her child will be killed by Noah. Do you believe every word that Alice said? Xia Jinyuan asked. Are you sure that there is no problem with every word that she said? Also, do you believe that her child is really in Noah's hands? After a series of questions, Will was unable to answer immediately. After a long while, Will lowered his head and bent down, rubbing his face hard. I don't know. I really don't know. My life has become a mess because of Noah's arrival. It doesn't matter whether Alice lied to me or not. What's important now is that I want my life to be peaceful again. My wife and my 2 children will not be harmed. Yiqian suddenly spoke and coldly interrupted Will. They won't be harmed. They can kill your wife and your 2 children at any time. Will, who was bent down with his head lowered, looked up, and his eyes were fierce. No, I will never allow them to hurt my family. So, we need to work together. We need to work together. I have money, a lot of money. If you help me kill Noah and Cyril, all my problems will be solved. They've all been dealt with. He had had enough of his current life. Every day was not a pleasure for him, but a torture. Every day, he lived in torment, afraid that his family would be killed, afraid that he would be killed. Xia Jinyuan could see how anxious Will was to get rid of the threat. However, he still needed to boil the frog in warm water. He needed to make Will more afraid. Your brother died protecting Cyril. Baldy said that Cyril didn't kill you because of your brother. Mr. Will, do you think Baldy is right? Would Cyril really keep you around for your brother's sake? I'm sorry. When I went to save you during the day, I was very surprised to hear what Baldy said. I was also very shocked. Cyril, I don't think he'll let you go so easily just because your brother saved him. Killing Abe was already a warning to you. Starting from your friends, one by one, they'll be killed because of you. Mr. Will, as long as you don't bow down to Cyril, he'll keep killing until all your friends and family are killed. However, I don't think you'll just watch your friends and family get killed. You'll quickly nod and agree. From then on, you'll become Cyril's slave. Your family and your children will all become his slaves. Mr. Will, do you like this life? Chapter 53:87. Do you like having your life threatened all the time? Do you like having your family live in fear every second, every hour, every day? No, absolutely no one likes that. Will clenched his fists. Slowly, fiercely, and coldly, he answered, I don't like it. I've had enough. Please let me in all of this. I need your help. It was an urgent need, a need that could not wait any longer. Abe's death made him realize that he had to do something. Abe's death also told him that Cyril would not let him go. Baldy was dead. The mercenaries he hired killed him. They killed one of Cyril's important subordinates. There was no turning back. He could only move forward. He looked at the mercenaries who asked him and said resolutely in his strongest voice, For the sake of my family, I have to get rid of all the threats. As long as you help me, I will provide you with weapons and cooperate with you in anything. As he spoke, Will turned his body slightly and took out a bank card from his pocket. $200,000. I think you will need it. The commission was $200,000. In addition to the 2 previous payments, Yi Qian blinked. Will was indeed a rich man. Xia Jinyuan, who was never short of money, smiled and took the bank card. Mr. Will's sincerity always touches me. For the sake of this. Xia Jinyuan's smile revealed a hint of savagery. What he said made Will nervous instantly. He almost slammed the table. He said, To kill Noah, we can ask Cyril for help. How to help? What did he need Will to do? When Will heard the last part, he was extremely excited. Wait for my news. I will arrange it very, very well. I will make Noah obediently follow me to the auction. I will make Cyril believe that the one who killed Baldy was not someone else, but Noah, who threatened me. This was Will's promise to Xia Jinyuan. As for how to do it, it was up to Will. After he left, Yi Qian, who was not very convinced, said softly, "Is he reliable? I still don't trust Will. He can only rely on us now. Noah and Cyril won't let him have a good life. We don't need to trust him too much. We just need to let Noah know that his good days in Melbourne are over." G3 answered Yi Jian with a smile. After glancing at Xia Jinyuan, he said, "The main thing is that we need to draw the attention of the country represented by Noah to us. Only then can it be convenient for the comrades who rescue the scientists to do what they want to do." In other words, Xia Jinyuan's battle plan also took into account the other group of comrades who were carrying out the mission. Even if he was in Melbourne, he could still strategize and fight a battle thousands of miles away. This was Xia Jinyuan's strength. He was the captain of the Snowfield Brigade and the king of all the special forces. He knew that danger and sacrifice were by his comrades' side every day, but he would do his best to solve these dangers and make sure that every comrade who carried out the mission returned safely. Over the next few days, Will did not appear again. However, he would tell Xia Jinyuan everything he did and where he went. V8, who was secretly tailing him, would also report Will's route at any time. There was no difference at all. Yi Qian finally believed Will's words. On the fourth day after Will left the hotel, he told Xia Jinyuan that they could take action. The special forces who rescued the scientists also figured out the target location and began to deploy carefully. The two teams were in different countries, but they were still able to cooperate seamlessly. This was the incomparable strength of the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces. Chapter 5388. On the fourth night, the Special Forces soldiers brought along the big gift they had meticulously prepared for Cyril and began their final plan, to blow up Cyril's auction house. Yi Qian was in charge of sniping and creating chaos while the rest of their comrades cooperated with each other to leave the scene. As the last of the sunset gradually faded and night quietly fell, Xia Jinyuan led his comrades from the hotel's underground parking lot and drove a commercial vehicle straight to the auction house. The area around the auction house in the suburbs was very quiet. It was not as noisy as the city, but there were armed guards patrolling the area. The illegal auction would start at 9 o'clock that night. Every time the auction started, the security around the area would be tight to prevent anyone from causing trouble. When Will arrived at the village, he had been paying attention to the surroundings. When he saw that the security was very tight, he couldn't help but feel a little worried. However, he was with Noah and couldn't immediately tell Xia Jinyuan. He could only pray that the mercenaries he hired would be able to find out in advance and not be discovered by Cyril's men before they even started to enter. When he looked at Noah, his expression was so cold that Will couldn't help but sneer in his heart. In order to make Noah take the bait and let Cyril temporarily believe that he had surrendered, he gave all 4 famous paintings that he had bought from a certain underground market in Noah's country to Cyril. The 4 famous paintings came from the Garden Museum. In 1990, thieves disguised as police officers stole 13 famous paintings from the museum, including one of the 36 works of a 17th century painting master. Until now, no one had discovered the theft, so no one knew that he had bought 4 of the 13 paintings. This time around, he handed them all to Cyril. Cyril was someone who knew what was good for him. When he saw the 4 famous paintings, the greed in his eyes was like that of a hyena that had been starved for a very long time. After receiving the 4 paintings, he spread the news the next day, which led to today's auction. He had spent a lot of money back then. 6 years had passed, and the black market value of the 4 paintings had increased by 36 times. With Cyril's greed, he would only sell them at an even higher price to those crazy collectors who were also very rich. Tonight, Cyril only took out 2 famous paintings. For the other 2 paintings, he would need to renegotiate the price according to the craziness of the collectors in tonight's auction. The greedy and shrewd Cyril attached great importance to this auction. With his whiskers, he could already see piles of money in front of him. When Noah found out that 4 of the 13 paintings stolen from their country in 1990 were in Cyril's hands, and that 2 of them would be auctioned off tonight, he felt as if he was soaked in cold water in the middle of winter. There was no way for him to improve his mood. The car slowly entered the village. Noah asked Will again with a gloomy expression, "Are you sure it's in his hands? Are you sure?" "I'm very sure. You can personally confirm if my information is accurate. Only 2 of them will be auctioned tonight, and Cyril still needs to keep the other 2 for the next auction. You have enough time to confirm whether or not it's true." Will spoke in a relaxed manner. He was very willing to use 4 famous paintings to resolve all the troubles of his family. He spoke in a relaxed manner, but Noah didn't feel relaxed at all. Upon hearing this, his gloomy expression instantly turned into anger. He suppressed his voice and roared, "You don't know anything. The 13 famous paintings were stolen for 15 years. We have always been searching for them, but there was no news about them. Now we finally have news about them, but you're telling me that there are 2 famous paintings being auctioned off tonight. Once they're bought by those vampire-like collectors, who knows where they would go again?" Chapter 53:89. Noah's emotions fluctuated, but the fierceness in his eyes didn't scare Will. Instead, it made Will feel good. "Ha ha, look, it's finally the damn thing that threatens my family's lives. Ha ha, it's finally their turn. There would be more things to worry about in the future. The mercenaries he hired would definitely not disappoint him. They won't." Noah was still growling in a low voice, his neck red. "Did you know that the paintings were in his hands a long time ago? You deliberately delayed telling me until now. Damn it, you must have done it on purpose, right?" Thinking of the 2 paintings being auctioned tonight, Noah couldn't control his emotions. He suspected that Will did it on purpose. Yes, Will did it on purpose, but how could he tell Noah that he did it on purpose? How could he tell a guy who threatened his family's lives that he gave all 4 paintings to Cyril? Will sneered, "If I did it on purpose, I wouldn't have told you that Cyril has the stolen paintings from your country. I'm not interested in the paintings. My only hope is that you don't hurt Alice Chung and her child." At the mention of Alice Chung, Noah's suspicions gradually subsided. He knew how much effort Will had put in to save Alice Chung. Noah didn't speak again. He sat quietly in the car until he got out. He didn't want to have a conflict with Cyril, but reality didn't allow him to do so. In order to retrieve the stolen paintings from their country, he and Cyril would have a fierce battle. He hoped that his brothers would arrive in Melbourne as soon as possible and that they could bring all 4 paintings back to their country. Noah, who was praying in his heart, saw that the surrounding area was heavily guarded. He sent a message to his soldiers, telling them to hide carefully and not to be discovered. Wireless communication devices couldn't be brought into the auction. Cyril was too cunning. Everyone who entered the venue, including the collectors who came tonight, would be searched and installed with signal jammers. Once they entered the venue, there was no way to contact the outside. Noah wanted to send a message to the soldiers outside, but he couldn't. He could tell the soldiers that the village was heavily guarded, but Will could not tell Xia Jinyuan that. Sitting in the car, Xia Jinyuan looked out at the darkening night sky. His right hand gently held Yi Qian's left hand, and his handsome face was cold. Everyone in the carriage didn't say much. They all closed their eyes and rested, conserving their energy to better complete the most important task of the night. Although the distance from the city to the district was far, the traffic was smooth, and they arrived in an hour and a half. Last time, they came with Will openly. This time, they drove the car directly into the forest and then quietly entered the village. Yi Qian noticed that Cyril was much more vigilant than the last time. Before they even got close to the village, they could already see 2 groups of armed robbers patrolling the area. She said in a low voice, "Cyril is taking this auction a lot more seriously than the last time. He's increased the security by at least 3 times. For paintings that have been stolen for 15 years and whose value is immeasurable are being auctioned off. Anyone would want to increase their manpower." Xia Jinyuan chuckled and asked Yi Qian, "Do you feel any pressure? Nervous?" Yi Qian smiled and shook her head. "No, I'm looking forward to it coming soon. I just hope that the more chaotic it is here, the more help the other team will receive their comrades on the mission." Chapter 5390. Compared to the other group of comrades, Yi Jian knew that the danger their group was facing was much smaller. The other group of comrades was facing an entire country. It was obvious how dangerous the other group of comrades was. It won't be a lot, but it will have a certain effect. Xia Jinyuan gently held Yi Qian's hand. The 8 of them sneaked into the village under the cover of the night. T6, who had been resting for a week, had not fully recovered from his injuries. His broken ribs had been broken for at least 20 days, but it had only been a week and he was still recovering. Therefore, he was in charge of guarding the retreat and providing communications for this operation. Z7, who had always been in charge of communications, took over T6's usual position. The 2 of them had temporarily swapped places. In the quiet village, the chirping of night insects could be heard. Yi Qian, who had sneaked into the night, listened to the chirping of night insects that did not discriminate between countries. He vaguely had the illusion that he was in his own country. 4 o'clock, 5 meters. Hidden sentry, avoid them. Roger. Roger. Entering the designated area, get ready to move. Roger. Entering the designated area. As several shadows continued to move stealthily, they had all arrived at the designated area after avoiding several hidden sentry posts. Just as they were about to move, V8, who was in charge of reconnaissance, suddenly tensed up. After carefully observing for a few seconds, he lowered his voice and laughed softly. We should have encountered Noah's soldiers. Well, it's really good this time. 2 targets at 10 o'clock. Do we need to take care of them? He asked Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan, who was hiding behind the bushes, noticed a shadow flitting past at 10 o'clock almost at the same time. Don't alert them for the time being. All teams, pay attention and get ready to move. Roger. Roger. Cover. Alert. Soft footsteps that were almost inaudible could be heard, and a few ghostly figures avoided the hidden sentries. At the corner of Xia Jinyuan's 3-meter-high wall, G3 ran up and stepped on Xia Jinyuan's hands that were placed on his knees. With the help of Xia Jinyuan's hands, G3 climbed up the 3-meter-high wall in an instant. K7 then stepped on Xia Jinyuan's hands, and G3 also climbed up the wall in a few seconds. There are already 2 comrades at the top of the wall. G3 was hanging upside down. Xia Jinyuan ran up a few steps, stepped on the wall, and grabbed G3's hands. When he looked again, both of them had climbed up the wall. Then T6 went up. Considering his injuries, they did not let him run. Z7, who was carrying a wireless communication device on his back, lifted T6 up and let his comrades on top support him. Soon, T6 successfully climbed up the corner of the wall. V8, who was responsible for guarding the surroundings, was the last to go up. In less than a minute and a half, all 8 of them sneaked in. They avoided the hidden sentries one after another, each of them working together to find the best position for themselves. Was indeed capable. He had provided a complete set of weapons and equipment. He knew how strict the security of this auction was. Even the infrared equipment had been prepared for Xia Jinyuan, and it was all military equipment. In Melbourne, as long as you had the money, the arms supplier could provide you with any equipment you wanted. Avoiding layer after layer of hidden sentries, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian, who were in charge of the operation, passed through a door. The 2 of them quickly crossed paths and sneaked into the inner area of the auction house. Almost all illegal trading places like to set up underground trading points, and Cyril was no exception. From the outside, there was nothing wrong with his trading point. The underground trading point was built 10 meters underground. It was divided into an inner area, an outer area, a secret door, a side door, an entrance, and an exit. There were a total of 4 doors. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian sneaked in through the secret door, which was also the one that took the most time. Chapter 5391. This time, the auction was held in the inner hall. Last time, they had entered from the outer hall. This showed how much importance Cyril placed on this auction. They sneaked in through the secret door and arrived at the side door, which was the side door that Baldy had walked out from last time. It was a very ordinary wooden door with a very ordinary lock. After confirming that there was no problem with the infrared light, Xia Jinyuan inserted a steel wire into the keyhole and gently pulled the lock open. The lock was unlocked, but the door did not move. Xia Jinyuan gently pushed the door, but the door did not move. There was an internal lock on the inside, which was a little troublesome. There's an internal lock. Xia Jinyuan gently made a hand gesture. Yi Qian immediately frowned. An internal lock was the most difficult to open. It could be opened, but it would take a lot of time. After confirming that there was no imaging heat source inside, and that the wooden door was made of planks, the gap was relatively large. The largest gap was large enough for a dagger to pierce through. Holding the dagger, he inserted it into the gap at the bottom of the two doors and slowly moved it upward. When the dagger reached the middle of the door, it encountered an obstacle. This should be the door bolt. Xia Jinyuan gently fiddled with the dagger. After about 2 minutes, he still could not pry open the door. Instead, he heard footsteps approaching. This was a corridor, and there was no way to retreat or hide. Their faces instantly turned cold, and they held their breaths, ready to attack at any time. The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and they could even see the light flashing. Xia Jinyuan suddenly shouted in Mola's native language, "Who is it? Stop, don't move." It was very imposing, and it instantly scared the 3 people coming over. They thought that they had run into their patrolling companions. Xia Jinyuan simply turned on the flashlight and turned the light to the maximum. He gave Yi Qian a look, and Yi Qian, with a cold expression, quickly took out a military dagger and strode towards the 3 people who were temporarily scared stiff. A few seconds later, someone asked which group they belonged to. No one knew which group they belonged to. The 2 of them increased their pace and used the dazzling light to sweep the area. The 3 people who were standing still raised their hands to block the light. Yi Qian suddenly rushed forward, and Xia Jinyuan turned off the light and also rushed forward. Hey, the 3 of them were caught off guard. How could they have imagined that the one they encountered was not their companions, but the Grim Reaper who wanted their lives? It was no wonder that the 3 of them were caught off guard. There was no movement outside, so how could there be a problem inside? Almost at the same time, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian took care of the people on the left and right, except for the guy in the middle. Without waiting for the other party to react, he covered the other party's mouth and slit their throats with a dagger. In just a few seconds, the 3 targets were dealt with. Both of them breathed a sigh of relief. Xia Jinyuan said in a low voice, "You stand guard here. I'll go and pry open the door first." "All right." Yi Qian nodded slightly. She would be able to take action immediately if she discovered anything and ensure the safety of her comrades behind her. Xia Jinyuan quickened his pace and went back to the wooden door with a bolt. He started to look for the position of the bolt again. After about 5 minutes, he heard the sound of something breaking. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and withdrew the dagger from the crack of the door. He gently pushed the wooden door, and the originally closed wooden door finally opened. It was slightly rusty and made a grinding sound. G3 and the others followed the sound. They turned on the flashlight in their hands and saw a long and narrow wooden staircase. The 2 of them walked up the stairs step by step with relaxed footsteps. It was pitch black inside. They took out a small flashlight and turned it on. The weak light shone at the feet of Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. Chapter 53:92. When they were about to reach the end of the stairs, they heard faint snoring sounds. Xia Jinyuan slowly poked his head out and saw 2 guards sleeping soundly against the wall with guns in their arms. Xia Jinyuan gestured to Yi Qian to separate them, then quickly approached one of the guards and slit his throat. Just like that, the poor man sank into his dreams forever. The auction stage is on the left, and the rooms on the right are for the buyers. Xia Jinyuan pointed to the room and said, "There shouldn't be anything in the rooms. Let's go to the left and take a look. We'll suspect that there should be a hidden underground vault there. It could be used to store drugs or cultural relics for auction. If he destroyed this place, Cyril would definitely go crazy." Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian followed the dim light from the flashlight to the auction stage that they had seen the other day. Yi Qian deliberately looked at the wooden structure of the stage and whispered to Xia Jinyuan, "This should be Cyril's favorite place." She spoke in a very relaxed tone. She was also quite relaxed, without a trace of nervousness. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but laugh when he saw that she could still talk about other things so casually. When it's over, I'll allow you to stand here for a minute to feel it. Thank you, Captain, but I don't like it. Yi Qian immediately left. This was Cyril's favorite place, but not hers. Who knew how many cultural relics from China had been illegally auctioned off by the people standing here? She retreated to Xia Jinyuan's side. Xia Jinyuan casually passed a flashlight to her and motioned for Yi Qian to light it up for him. Yi Qian took the flashlight and shone the light on the heavy hanging curtain. Will said that they could take a look here. The two of them walked softly to the curtain of the auction stage. Xia Jinyuan slowly pulled the curtain on the left, but he didn't find anything on the cement wall. When he pulled the curtain on the right, the two of them exchanged glances. There was a bulletproof steel door on the wall on the right side of the tent. The steel door was tightly shut, and two password-locked locks, similar to those used in a bank vault, appeared in front of them. Xia Jinyuan gently pushed the door, but there was no response. He was just going through the motions, knowing that it was impossible to push the door open so easily. He listened closely, but could not hear any sound coming from inside. T6 used an infrared sensor to detect if there was a heat source inside. A few seconds later, T6 said in a low voice, "There's no heat source. You may enter." It was not difficult for Xia Jinyuan to crack the password lock. Yi Qian was in charge of keeping watch while Xia Jinyuan tried to see if he could successfully unlock it. On the other side, T6 could see the two of them through the infrared thermal imaging. One of them was standing guard while the other's arm was moving. He lowered his voice and said smugly, "Q King, it's Xing Niao who's working with you this time, so don't embarrass yourself. It's just a password lock. If it were me, I'd be able to unlock it in 3 minutes." Unlocking a password lock was not a problem for them, but most of the time, they would need to use some tools. Xia Jinyuan was not provoked by T6, nor did he touch the lock immediately. After looking at it carefully, he said calmly, "I can't unlock it without some tools. As long as I press the first number, the alarm control system will automatically call the police through the wireless network." Cyril was very cautious. He had installed the safest password lock in the vault. It required a total of 3 sets of passwords to open the door. Moreover, if the first number was wrong, the alarm would be called immediately. Xia Jinyuan, who did not have any tools on hand, did not try to unlock the vault. He could not act rashly at this time. Even if he acted, there was no way for him to unlock the vault. Chapter 5393. When their comrades, who were waiting for the two of them outside, heard this, they knew they wouldn't be able to touch the various treasures Cyril had hidden here tonight. They all felt it was a pity. However, Yi Qian said there might not be any illegally obtained cultural relics in there. "We only have one goal. It would be great if we could make Cyril vomit blood, but since we can't do that now, let's just blow it up." "What a pity. I was thinking of taking a few of them back to China." T6 shook his head and felt very disappointed. When he saw the cultural relics stolen from the Chinese side being illegally auctioned off, T6 had been thinking about it and wanted to do his best to retrieve the cultural relics that belonged to the Chinese side back to China. He had come here with high hopes. Now that he knew there was no way to open the door to check, he could not hide his disappointment. He took a deep breath and said with a stern look in his eyes, "Then let's get started. Let's not dawdle." Not only was T6 disappointed, but Yi Qian was also feeling the same. What would they do? As the captain, Xia Jinyuan could understand how his comrades were feeling at this moment. Before they came here, they were still happily talking about how great it would be if they could retrieve a few cultural relics. But reality had stopped them from doing so. After a few seconds of silence, he said to Yi Qian, who was still looking at the steel door, "Set up the explosives inside and outside. Later, set up the small attic outside as well. Since we can't see what's inside, it's better to destroy this place." Yi Qian, who had collected his thoughts, nodded. And Machem. After that, he put down his backpack and the two of them quickly got to work. The backpacks were loaded with time bombs provided by Will. They were extremely powerful and could level this place to the ground with just 3 of them. After setting up all the time bombs as quickly as possible, the two of them retraced their steps and spent a lot of time trying to avoid Cyril's whistle, as well as the soldiers brought over by Noah. The two of them alternated between advancing forward and back until they came out with their backs covered in sweat. Noah's soldiers were still keeping watch nearby. They needed to keep an eye on whether anyone would come out from inside and whether they would bring the famous paintings to be auctioned. They also needed to keep an eye on the surroundings to prevent anyone from discovering them. Inside the auction house, Bahi and G3, who had taken care of the two guards and disguised themselves as guards, kept an eye on the surroundings. When the lights in the auction house suddenly flickered 3 times, the two who had lost contact with the outside knew that they could take action. One of the famous paintings had already been auctioned off, but before the second famous painting could go up on stage, the lights in the auction hall flickered 3 times before they were all extinguished. The sound of gunshots followed closely behind. When Noah heard the gunshot, his heart tightened. After that, he heard Will exclaiming in shock, "Is there someone who wants to snatch the painting away?" Snatch? The famous painting? Noah's face instantly lit up with joy. He whispered, "Let's go, let's get out of here." As he spoke, another gunshot rang out. It sounded like it was coming from his right, but it also sounded like it was coming from his left. Before he could make a complete judgment, Will exclaimed, "God, someone is running up the stage." Noah, who had already stood up, didn't wait for Will to say anything. With a tense expression, he ignored the warning and crept over to the guards he had been keeping an eye on. When he passed by a few seats, he said something and a few more people stood up. The auction house, which had suddenly been extinguished, wasn't in a mess. Cyril's men kept shouting for everyone to be quiet, sit properly, and don't move recklessly. They would find the two fellows who had opened fire. Bahi and G3, who had created chaos, fired once again at the auction stage. As the gunshots continued, many people started to lose their patience. However, Cyril, who was sitting steadily backstage, started laughing. What was right? Someone was here to snatch the painting away from him. Chapter 5394. Cyril wasn't a simple person. Even without Will's reminder, he knew that if he released the news that he had a few famous paintings in his possession, some people would definitely have bad intentions. Cyril had long been prepared to release the news of the famous paintings being auctioned. They wanted to snatch his paintings? Beat them to death. No matter how chaotic the place was, with Cyril holding the fort, it wouldn't be too chaotic. Noah and the others were about to make a move when suddenly a loud sound like a volcanic eruption rang out. The entire place shook violently as if it had been hit by an earthquake. "What's going on?" Cyril, who was still feeling satisfied with his arrangements, held onto the heavy wooden table and shouted, "Scram outside and see what's going on." It wasn't an earthquake. It was the sound of a bomb explosion. Moreover, it was in the vicinity. The power of the bomb was relatively great, and it shook the entire place. The crystal chandelier above made a hua-hua sound, and countless glass shards fell. In an instant, several bodyguards brought by the collectors were injured. None of the collectors who were being protected were injured. They were just in a somewhat sorry state. "I'm impressed. Cyril, what bad things have you done? Why did something so terrible happen tonight? I'm impressed. You're such a failure tonight. Right now, I'm very doubtful of your sincerity in this auction. Do you not want to auction at all? Are you just toying with us?" The collectors who came here were starting to feel dissatisfied. They had brought money to bid for the famous paintings. Moreover, they chose to believe in Cyril and only came here because of him. In the end, damned thing. One moment, there were gunshots, and the next moment, there were explosions. God, what on earth was he trying to do? Cyril himself didn't know what had happened. How could he answer these capable collectors who he still wanted to continue working with? He, who had always been ruthless, had to step out and resolve this matter. To everyone's surprise, the explosion didn't end there. A second explosion followed, and in less than a minute, they heard a series of loud noises. Flames soared into the sky, illuminating the night sky of the entire village. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian exchanged glances and smiled. This time, Cyril would definitely fall for it. It's up to Will now. Our mission is complete. He glanced at Xia Jinyuan, who was engulfed in flames, and said coldly, "The more chaotic they are, the better it is for us." Yi Qian, who was sweating profusely during the evacuation, wiped his forehead and pursed his lips before replying, "I hope there won't be any problems with Will." She believed that Will was eager to get rid of Noah and Cyril, but she still couldn't completely trust Will's character. Because once Will revealed any information about them to Cyril and Noah, even if she and her comrades all left Melbourne alive, they would be skinned alive. T6's voice came through the earpiece. "Let's chat after we leave this place. I've already withdrawn. Let's wait for Bai He and G3 to withdraw from the inner field." They hadn't left the village yet, so it was indeed not the time to chat. Xia Jinyuan held Yi Qian's hand tightly, and the two of them quickly blended into the night. After walking for a short distance, he turned off the wireless communication and said to Yi Qian with a smile, "I realize that every time I fight with you, things always go smoothly. It's quite interesting." When Yi Qian heard him say this, he thought about the missions they had carried out together. It seemed like it was true. She smiled, and there was affection in her eyes. "Because of our tacit understanding, because we don't want each other to get hurt, because they both protected each other." Chapter 5395. All along, Yi Qian's greatest wish was to catch up with Xia Jinyuan's footsteps and fight alongside him. Now, it had finally come true. She used all the skills she had learned to fight alongside him. She was willing to become his most powerful subordinate and his most powerful guardian. Xia Jinyuan was extremely satisfied with her answer. As he retreated, he pulled her hand to his lips and kissed it. He chuckled and said, "Let's work hard together and not get hurt. Let's work hard together and live well every time." They had come this far because of their joint efforts. They would continue to work hard for the rest of their lives and never leave each other. Behind them, the flames soared into the sky. The two of them had already left the danger zone and were quietly waiting for their comrades to return. On the other side, V8 and K7, who had come to support them, worked together to deal with one of Noah's soldiers. They took advantage of the chaos caused by G3 and Bai-He to push them to somewhere outside the inner hall. They had to make Cyril keep an eye on Noah. They had to have some actual evidence to make Cyril believe them. Then, they might as well frame him. The flames had already lit up the village. When Cyril, who finally knew what had happened outside, heard his subordinate's report, he flew into a rage. This explosion had basically destroyed his auction house. Faced with such deep hatred, Cyril couldn't wait to tear apart the troublemaker. The outer hall was blown up, and the inner hall was damaged. All the chandeliers were smashed, and the inner hall's beam structure was heavily damaged. A good auction house instantly became a dangerous building. The famous painting was sent away in time. All the buyers who had come to participate in the auction left the inner hall under the protection of their own bodyguards and Cyril's men. Everyone who came out looked terrible. When they entered the auction house, they were all dressed in suits and leather shoes. At first glance, one could tell that they were successful people. When they came out, they were all battered and exhausted. Some buyers were even injured and bleeding. Noah wanted to rush onto the stage several times but was forced back. He didn't even have a chance to get close to the famous painting. He could only watch as the famous painting that had been stolen from his country for more than 10 years slipped away under his nose. The collector was furious. He thought that it was Cyril's fault that the security was not good enough. He wanted to blame Cyril, but when he thought of Cyril's personality, he decided to swallow his anger and leave. If it wasn't for the painting, I wouldn't even take half a step into his place. Half a step. A collector whose forehead was scratched by a crystal chandelier glass shard pressed the wound on his forehead with a handkerchief and cursed loudly as he walked toward his car under the escort of 4 bodyguards. Damn shorty. I will die in the hands of his greed one day. Not only did he fail to bid for the famous painting he liked, but he was also injured and had to leave. The fury in this collector's heart was so great that even his back view as he walked away could tell that he was angry. Cyril, who was talking to Will, heard his subordinate's report and narrowed his eyes. He raised his hand, and in less than 3 minutes after the collector got into the car and left, The other collectors who hadn't left yet saw the car that left first being blown up, and no one in the car survived. Height was a forbidden zone for Cyril because he was only 164 meters tall. He was a very, very short guy. Will, who had seen Cyril kill 6 people with a wave of his hand, lowered his eyes slightly and continued, "It won't be long before Mr. Andre's painting falls into Noah's hands. He definitely won't let go of the other 3 paintings and will snatch them back." Hearing this, Cyril laughed loudly. After laughing, his gloomy eyes emitted a cold gleam. "I really hope that he will snatch back the paintings that I auction off. I really, really hope that he will." Chapter 53:96. Cyril was very satisfied with Will's performance, but Noah wasn't. Originally, he had planned to auction off the 2 paintings tonight. He had arranged for the soldiers outside to follow them and wait for the opportunity to seize them. But now, the auction house had been bombed, and the first painting that had been auctioned had returned to Cyril's hands without being handed over to the buyer. He didn't want to confront Cyril, but it had come to a point where he had no choice but to confront him. Someone dared to bomb Cyril's auction house, which showed how much this person wanted to take the 4 paintings from Cyril's hands. These were the paintings that their country had lost for more than 10 years, and now they were right in front of him. No matter what, he had to bring these 4 paintings back to his country. Noah sat in the car with a gloomy expression. As he waited for Will to come out, he kept thinking about how to snatch the painting back from Cyril's hands. Someone knocked on the car window and quickly opened the car door and bent over to enter. "Colonel, one of our soldiers is missing." The person in the car brought Noah a piece of news that made his mood even worse. Immediately, Noah's face darkened as if covered with a layer of frost. "Missing? Yes, Colonel, missing. We searched around but didn't find any trace of him. We guessed he might have been sacrificed. Might have been sacrificed." Noah pursed his lips and looked at the raging fire that was still burning. His heart sank little by little. If he had really been sacrificed, hope would have been swallowed by the fire. If he had been discovered by Cyril's people, then Noah's dark brown eyes flashed fiercely. Then the battle between them and Cyril would soon begin. The phone rang, and the flashing light on the screen made Noah's face as gloomy as a ghost. He picked up the phone, and Will's voice came from the phone. "Noah, did you do that just now? Are you crazy? You bombed Cyril's auction house. You must be crazy, crazy. You are all a bunch of damn lunatics." He roared in a panicked and enraged voice. There was also a deep sense of fear in his voice as he said, "Cyril is very, very angry right now, and he's searching everywhere for the person who blew up the auction hall. You are a bunch of lunatics. Lunatics." Noah gently closed his eyes. Will thought that he was the one who bombed the auction house. "Well, what I need are the paintings. Bombing the auction house won't do me any good. Where are you now? I'm waiting for you in the car. We need to meet." Noah cut off the call and ordered his subordinates in the car. Pack up and return to the hotel. The hotel was now their territory, and all of their weapons were in the hotel. If Cyril really wanted to find them, they would at least have weapons to defend themselves. "What should we do now? What 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 should we do, Weiss, now? What should we do now? He. What should we do now? Teet. He. T-test teet. No. You bunch of lunatics, do you know that? He. Inside, Cyril looked at the body that was dragged back. He carefully looked at the palm and wrist of the body. It was a white man who often used guns. White man. Cyril stood up with a vicious look in his eyes. After standing still for a few seconds, he ordered in a menacing voice, "Find out where he came from. No, find out where he lives and where he's been recently. I want to know who dares to make an enemy of me." Chapter 53:97. Although the person was dead, the traces he had left behind would not disappear so quickly. If one wanted to know the origin of a person, one had to start from where he had gone and who he had met. It would not take long for one to find out a bit about this person. Cyril did not need too much information. He only needed to know if this person had any accomplices. If there were, he would kill them immediately. No accomplices? Could there be no accomplices? Cyril, whose eyes were filled with malice, did not believe it. He took a deep puff from a cigar in his hand. It was as if only the strong tobacco smell could suppress the anger in Cyril's heart that was about to burst out of the lava. After Xia Jinyuan and the others successfully diverted the trouble, they quickly withdrew from the auction house and drove all the way back to the hotel. Next, they had to complete a major task, which was to rescue the scientist's wife, Alice Chung. Although Alice Cheng's identity was a little questionable, she was the scientist's wife, and the Snowfield Brigade's special forces were here to rescue her. Therefore, they had to rescue Alice Chung no matter what. Alice Chung is hiding in this area. When they returned to the hotel, V8 immediately took out the hotel's fire control diagram and used a pencil to draw the area where Alice Chung might be hiding. On the 13th floor, on the floor where Noah and the others are staying, there are 4 rooms on both sides of the fire control door that no one has entered or exited. Alice Chung is very likely to be in one of the 4 rooms. Cyril should have discovered the clues we deliberately left behind by now. With his cautiousness, he will definitely follow the clues and find the hotel sooner or later. A guy who likes to use violence to solve problems might just rush into the hotel with his men. We can take advantage of this. Before he could finish his sentence, Xia Jinyuan's phone beeped with a text message. He picked up the phone on the table and looked at it. Xia Jinyuan's eyes narrowed slightly. Cyril is faster than we thought. Although the words came out of nowhere, the comrades who were fighting in tacit understanding suddenly smiled with the same expression. Yi Qian silently picked up the glass of water beside him and lowered his head to take a few sips in a row. That's great. Cyril and Noah are going up against each other. We must have put in a lot of effort to make this work. Captain Xia said that we would definitely make this happen, and it was true. After drinking the water, Yi Qian held the glass with a faint smile in his dark eyes. He stared unblinkingly at the man who was preparing the next step of the battle plan with deep admiration in his eyes. Cyril was already on his way to the hotel, and Noah was also on his way back to the hotel. This was going to be interesting. When the 2 groups of people met, it was very likely that they would fight directly. Then, they would have enough time to sneak into the 13th floor and rescue Alice Chung. In Melbourne, Cyril had his own huge information network. From his order to investigate the identity of the white man and his whereabouts, as well as Will's intention to release the news of the auction of the 4 paintings, he saw some suspicious white men going in and out of places. Cyril quickly found the information he wanted. Why did Cyril believe Will's words so much? It was very simple. Will told him that the white man might have found out that the paintings were with him and deliberately sent people to approach him. He also told Cyril that his family was threatened by the white man. Cyril investigated and found that to be true, so he quickly believed Will. He even blamed the death of Baldy on Noah. Chapter 5398. Cyril was a man of action, and as soon as Noah arrived at the hotel with a dark expression on his face, Cyril rushed in with his men in a menacing manner. All of them were armed with guns, and the first thing they did when they rushed in was to open fire on the ceiling of the hotel. Gunshots and screams mixed together, and the entire hotel fell into a state of panic. Yi Jian, who had been hiding in the dark, saw a short, ferocious-looking, middle-aged man standing in the middle. He raised his hand gently, and the gunshots stopped abruptly. A muscular man walked to the front desk and pointed an AK that had just fired. The muzzle of the AK was still hot. The middle-aged man, standing in the middle of the group, was none other than Cyril, and there were at least 50 fully armed guards standing behind him. Yi Qian whispered in Xia Jinyuan's ear. He came in with such a big fanfare. Noah has enough time to escape. You underestimated him. Xia Jinyuan shook his head with a smile. He's trying to scare Noah so that Noah will come out on his own. Cyril's men must be outside. He won't let Noah escape from the hotel. Yi Qian blinked. Captain Xia, you know Cyril very well. Cobra is Mola herself, Xia Jinyuan explained succinctly. He knew Yi Qian would understand what he meant. Yi Qian nodded slightly. V8's excited voice came from the headset. Hugh King, Cyril has blocked the outside. Noah's going to have a headache this time. Hearing this, Xia Jinyuan gave Yiqian an "I'm very powerful" look. Yiqian could not help but smile. She always knew that her Captain Xia was very powerful. Noah, who had returned to the hotel, did not expect that Cyril would come to the hotel tonight. Although he was prepared to fight with Cyril, he had to wait for reinforcements. Now, before the backup arrived, Cyril had already arrived at the hotel. Noah, who didn't want anything to happen tonight, didn't panic. After receiving the secret alarm from the front desk and seeing how many people Cyril had brought with him through the surveillance camera, Noah immediately arranged for an evacuation. Q King, Noah, prepared to retreat. G3, who was watching the 13th floor, reported in a low voice. Someone opened room 1317. After a slight pause, G3's suppressed voice sounded a little excited. Alice Chung. They're going to take Alice Chung away. Previously, they had said that they wanted to confirm which room Alice Chung was in. In the blink of an eye, Noah had taken the initiative to expose himself. Even someone as calm as G3 was a little excited at this moment. Xia Jinyuan was not that excited. From the way they're looking after Alice Chung, we can confirm that they've given up on using Alice Chung as bait. As long as they keep an eye on our brothers in the other team in their own country. This was to tell his comrades that there was no need to be too proud when they saw Alice Chung. Chapter 5399. What happened in the hall had nothing to do with Xia Jinyuan and the rest. Almost all the staff in the hall were from Noah's country. Even if Cyril killed all the staff in the hall, Xia Jinyuan and the rest would not show up. Gunshots rang out in the front hall. Stray bullets hit the dazzling crystal lamps in the hall and shattered them all over the floor. The light shone on the floor, making it seem as if countless broken diamonds were embedded in it. Blood flowed like snakes, staining the broken diamonds red and wetting the shiny floor. Cyril, who had opened fire without hesitation, was now well protected. He sat on the sofa in the hotel, waiting for the people who wanted to blow up his auction house and steal the 4 famous paintings to show up. Xia Jinyuan and Yiqian were retreating. They needed to surround Noah. It cannot be said that they were going to surround Noah. Cyril's men were there to surround Noah. They were just going to rescue Alice Chung. All of the entrances and exits in the hotel were guarded by Cyril's men, and some of the guests heard the gunshots and tried to escape in a panic. However, they were shot dead by Cyril's men, and no one was given a chance to escape. Whoever dared to escape will be shot dead. This was Cyril's order. Noah, who was retreating, had reached the staircase on the 1st floor. This was the staircase that led to the 2nd floor of the underground parking lot. They only needed to go down 5 more floors to enter the parking lot and leave. However, they were blocked. Cyril's men were at the exit on the 1st floor. They aimed their rifles at the 2nd floor. If there was any movement from above, they would shoot immediately. There are 6 people in total. Don't let anyone go. Noah put a silencer on his pistol and ordered in a low voice, "Shoot immediately after I count to 3. Yes, Colonel." The 12 soldiers nodded in a low voice. They were all soldiers of the country. Although they were a little nervous facing the gunmen outside, they were not afraid. They were very calm and believed that they would be able to escape. G3, who had been keeping a close eye on the staircase wall, slowly took out his pistol. He did not need to aim at any target. He only needed to shoot casually and alert the people guarding the staircase. 1, 2, 3. Noah signaled the soldiers to open fire. Bang! Bang! The sound of gunfire suddenly rang out, like the sound of a demon, incomparably ferocious, reverberating in the stairwell. G3 fired in front of them and successfully alerted Cyril's men. The 6 targets that Noah's soldiers were aiming at did not hesitate to shoot upstairs. Bang, bang, bang! Gunshots rang out fiercely. Some of them were shot dead by Noah's soldiers, while others were lucky enough to escape and quickly counterattacked. Fuck! Noah cursed under his breath and shouted, "Up there! Go! They had already alerted the people below, so there was no way for them to retreat. At least 10 of Cyril's subordinates rushed up the stairs with their guns drawn. The hotel building, which had been rather quiet just a moment ago, was now filled with gunshots. Noah and his 12 soldiers fired as they quickly retreated. G3, who was hiding behind the firehouse on the second floor, saw Alice Chung, whom they needed to rescue, and calmly opened fire in self-defense. Seeing this scene, G3 completely agreed with Xia Jinyuan's initial analysis. The reason why the scientist's itinerary was suddenly exposed was because his wife had reported it in advance, which led to the scientist, who was preparing to return to China, being placed under house arrest. Alice Chung was the scientist's wife, and at the same time, she had been monitoring the scientist. Even if she had children with the scientist, her responsibility was still to monitor the scientist's every move. Once she found something unusual, she would immediately report it. Chapter 5400. G3 slowly retreated behind the fire escape door as he closely monitored Alice Cheng's every move. There wasn't much light in the corridor, only the green fire escape indicator lights were on. Due to the darkness, one could still see the trail of bullets. Some of them hit the walls, while others hit the iron staircase handrails. The entire fire escape staircase was filled with endless gunshots and echoes. Although Noah had few people, their combat ability was quite strong. G3 had already experienced this at the train station. It was impossible for the country to send ordinary soldiers to Melbourne for a mission. The soldiers sent were the elites of the army, but they were not soldiers of the special forces. This also reflected the country's contempt for China. They thought that the elites of the ordinary army were enough to kill the people sent by China to rescue Alice Chung. This country had always considered itself a big country and had always been arrogant. It was not surprising that they looked down on China. After all, not only did they look down on China, but they also looked down on countries all over the world. Any country that dared to go against them would usually be taught a lesson by them. In recent years, they were also the ones who started the war. It was obvious how domineering they were. Seeing that Cyril's subordinates had forced Noah and the others to not go downstairs, they could only choose to go upstairs. When they reached the third floor, Cyril's people happened to pass by G3. Boldly, he flashed out from behind the fire door and successfully blended into Cyril's team. This time, it was G3 who directly faced Noah. Don't kill them all. Leave them to delay Cyril. Amidst the gunshots, Xia Jinyuan's cold voice came from the wireless communicator. Suppress the fire. Now is not the time to kill them. Z7, who was firing, snorted. They want to kill us. Now that we have a chance to kill them, why don't we fire? Just kill them. If anything happens, find Cyril. Kill Noah now and let Alice escape alone? Xia Jinyuan lowered his voice and said, It won't be too late to kill him after Alice comes out. That's fine. Z7 agreed without hesitation. Damn it, I've been wanting to get rid of these guys for a long time. They're like flies, annoying just looking at them. V8 asked, Everyone in the hotel is Noah's men. Why would they leave the room and confront Cyril? Stay in the room and let the people in the hotel deal with Cyril. You don't need to put yourself in danger. His men were everywhere. It would be difficult for Cyril to catch them. Yi Qian answered, Noah doesn't want the hotel to be exposed, and he doesn't want Cyril and Melbourne to know that the hotel is related to their country. This place is very important to Noah's country. Noah has to protect the hotel and the staff in the hotel. He can't destroy this place because of him. Although they were now in opposing positions with Noah, it had to be said that Noah was a qualified soldier. He was very clear about his position and would never choose to sacrifice more people's lives for his own. With Xia Jinyuan's reminder, G3, who had infiltrated Cyril's men, was shooting blindly. His combat skills were much higher than Cyril's men. He kept shooting blindly and forced Noah and the others to retreat upstairs until Noah was forced to the floor where Xia Jinyuan and the others were. Cyril's men were all heading for the fire escape stairs. Xia Jinyuan and the others had to get ahead of them if they wanted to save Alice Chung. Chapter 5401. However, the hotel staff supporting Noah also walked towards the fire escape stairwell. The entire hotel was run by the country behind Noah. But not all of the hotel staff were loyal to the country behind Noah. Most of them were waiters. This was because waiters were the most convenient to monitor the hotel and collect intelligence without arousing suspicion. The waiters supporting Noah engaged Cyril's men. The two sides fought fiercely in the hotel corridor. Bullets rained down on the walls, ceiling, and floor. Cyril was surprised that Noah had reinforcements. There were not many white people in his investigation. Why would there be a white person in the hotel that he wanted to capture alive? Cyril was able to carve out a path in Melbourne that even the local police did not dare to offend. Other than being vicious and cunning, he was also a very smart guy. Cyril immediately thought of the lobby manager who fired the first shot. A thought flashed through his mind, but Cyril slowly suppressed it. He must be overthinking. The hotel could not be a white person's hotel. That could only mean that he did not investigate thoroughly and thought there were only a few white people. Now that the white person had reinforcements, he should not waste too much time. He should capture him and leave immediately. Fifth floor, force them into the fifth floor. Xia Jinyuan's cold and calm voice entered G3's ears. G3 looked at the number on the fire escape light and reported a set of numbers in English. Fourth floor, they were now on the fourth floor. As the gunshots got closer and closer, Yi Qian began to count in his heart from 10 to 1. The success of this plan all depended on this step. Forcing the other party to show up instead of killing them directly was an unexpected arrangement by Xia Jinyuan and Cyril. Therefore, Cyril's men did not really think about killing the targets trapped in the corridor. They only needed to force them to the point where they could not resist. Both sides had the same intention. This made it easier for the comrades of the Snowfield Brigade to carry out their plan. However, G3 did not know that Cyril wanted to capture them alive. Every time he fired a shot, Noah and the others would drag their comrades back and launch an even crazier counterattack. Cyril's men had suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, there were others to fill in the gaps. Otherwise, Noah and the others would have killed their way out. The target was getting closer and closer. They had already reached the fifth floor, and it was time for the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces to take action. Fire! Xia Jinyuan's deep voice was transmitted to Yi Qian's ears through the walkie-talkie. Yi Qian, who was hiding in the first hotel room outside the fire escape door on the fifth floor, sighed softly. She was guarding the first room on the fifth floor, while V8 was guarding the fourth floor. Noah and the others didn't have a chance to go up to the fifth floor, but T6 was waiting for them on the sixth floor. This meant that the fourth, fifth, and sixth floors were all guarded by the Snowfield Brigade. As long as Alice Chung was alone, they would have a chance to rescue her from Noah. Now, it couldn't be considered a rescue. From the beginning, Alice Chung did not need to be rescued. They could only say that they invited Alice Chung to return to China with them. The gunshots were getting more and more intense. Chaotic footsteps came from all over the hotel. All the rooms in the hotel were closed. Only gunshots could be heard in the corridors, stairways, and halls. The soundproofing in the rooms was good. The guests on the higher floors did not hear the gunshots at all. Due to the sudden power outage, they called the front desk to ask for the reason. The phone line had been disconnected, and there was no sound at all when they picked up the landline. Chapter 5402. Some of the guests sat in their rooms and waited, or opened a bottle of wine and drank slowly, waiting for the call. Some of the more impatient guests opened the door and wanted to go downstairs to ask in person. They hadn't heard anything when they were walking in the corridor of their floor, but when they reached the stairs, they suddenly heard bang, bang, bang. Sounds like something was constantly hitting the ground. The more alert guests immediately realized what the sound was. They were so scared that they quickly went back to their rooms and didn't dare come out. They even used their cell phones to inform their companions who were staying in the same hotel, but in different rooms. The local police in Melbourne also received a call. When the police heard that someone had entered the hotel and started shooting, they had no choice but to send police officers on duty. At the same time, they told the police to stay in their rooms and find a way to block the door with movable objects such as mattresses and sofas to prevent any accidents from happening to them. The entire hotel was actually in a mess at this time, but because everyone stayed in their rooms and didn't come out to run, it looked calm on the surface. Because the bullets deliberately avoided Alice Chung, this gave her a chance to escape. The fire door on the 5th floor was in front of her. She just needed to open it, and she would be able to escape. She was an extremely smart woman. Although she was willing to be the bait, she didn't want to die here. Realizing that she had a chance to escape, Alice Chung began to fire while retreating to the fire door. Noah and the others had the same plan. At the same time, the entire power supply in the hotel was cut off. The originally brightly lit hotel was plunged into darkness in a few seconds. Alice was already close to the fire door. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she kept taking deep breaths. At the same time, her hand slowly touched the handle of the fire door. "God bless," she whispered softly, and then pulled open the fire door. The expected light didn't shine in from the corridor outside the fire door. When she opened the door, it was pitch black outside. In other words, Alice Chung was safe. She didn't expose herself by pulling the door open. Alice Chung, who was sweating profusely, was overjoyed. She faced the darkness outside as if she had been reborn. Yi Qian flashed through the guest room almost at the same time she pulled open the fire door. Because G3 was watching Alice Cheng's every move, Yi Qian could be so timely. With a flash, he launched a sneak attack from behind Alice Cheng. His elbow strangled her neck, and like a rag doll, he dragged Alice Chung into the guest room with lightning-fast movements. There was a male guest in the room, but he was lying unconscious on the bed. Yi Qian knocked him out to prevent him from screaming. Although Alice Chung had been vigilant, she didn't expect that she would be attacked as soon as she came out. She lost her initial counterattack. She heard the attacker tell her that she was from the Chinese side, Alice Cheng's people. She immediately gave up struggling and let the other party drag her in. She had been waiting for the Chinese people to come, but she did not expect to meet them at this time. They must have been here for a long time, but Noah had never noticed them. Shocked, Alice gave up struggling. At this moment, she didn't want to struggle anymore. She needed to get out alive. Noah and the others couldn't do it anymore. So, if she wanted to get out alive, she had to rely on the Central Party to rescue her. "Okay, I understand. I won't move. I'll cooperate with you." Alice, who understood the situation, said calmly. She could feel her body slowly relaxing. Because of the arrival of the Chinese side, she actually felt that she would be able to return safely. God, she would definitely leave safely. Chapter 54:03. Yi Qian did not let go of Alice immediately. He first took the gun from her hand and searched her body with his other hand. After confirming that there were no dangerous weapons, Yi Qian said calmly, "It's very chaotic outside now. Someone wants to kill the people who have been following you. I can let go, and you can call for help. But I can tell you with certainty that if you call for help, the result will not be what you want." She was a smart woman. He believed that she would make the smartest choice. Alice, whose neck was covered in sweat, nodded with difficulty. Her neck was tightly held by Yi Qian's bent elbow. She could not move her head at all. Even if she wanted to nod, it was a very small nod. "Of course I know. Now I want to get out of here alive, and you're my best choice." Yi Qian slowly released his elbow, but he kept his guard up against her. He pressed down on his headset and whispered to his comrades, "The target has been successfully rescued. Retreat." Xia Jinyuan, who did not intend to fight to the death with Noah, immediately retreated. Only when Noah continued to fight Cyril's men and hold Cyril back could they retreat more smoothly. Blocked from above and below, Noah and his men were like trapped beasts. There was no way they could break free. Yi Qian was on the 5th floor, and Xia Jinyuan and his men were on the 6th floor. They needed to meet up next. Now was not the time to meet up. Cyril did not intend to let anyone leave the hotel. He needed to capture Noah and his men before he could leave the hotel. When could he capture Noah? Naturally, he had to wait until Noah ran out of ammunition. They did not have to wait for long. After about 15 minutes, the gunshots in the staircase gradually died down until both sides finally stopped. The gunfire in the staircase had stopped, but gunfire was still ringing out incessantly in the hotel lobby and several other places. The plainclothes hotel attendants charged forward several times, but all of them were unable to break through the encirclement. Instead, they were being suppressed by Cyril's gunfire. At this time, Noah had already realized that Alice Chung was not by his side. Facing dozens of gun barrels aimed at him, Noah, who had been shot in his right leg, covered the wound and said calmly, "I need to see Cyril. I have something important to tell him." Right now, he needed to see Cyril and tell him who was causing trouble in his underground drug manufacturing factory. Alice had disappeared. Those damned mercenaries must have rescued her. G3, who had not left yet, narrowed his eyes slightly. He opened a fire escape door on the 5th floor in front of everyone and walked out. It was pitch black, and he had been blending in, so no one noticed him at all. They thought that he was going to tell Cyril. G3, who walked out calmly, immediately reported in a deep voice, "Noah is very likely to tell Cyril what we did together a few days ago. None of these people can be left alive. Go into the room and meet up with Yi Qian first." Xia Jinyuan did not panic. Now that they were in the dark, there were many ways to deal with Noah. Noah still wanted to scheme against them? Then let him have a taste of being schemed against instead. Cyril's men were already in the corridor on the 5th floor. Yi Qian, Alice, and G3 were temporarily trapped, but their comrades on the 6th and 4th floor could still move. Before the power was restored, Xia Jinyuan, Z7, and Bai He quickly approached the lobby. V8 and K7 went to the hotel's main mechanical and electrical control center to prevent the sudden restoration of power and expose themselves. Cyril, who was sitting in a lobby, waited for his subordinates to kidnap the white man. He would let these white men know his power. Chapter 5404. Cyril, who sensed that there might be a problem with the hotel, did not stand in the middle of the lobby like before, treating the hotel as a place for him to rampage. Instead, he sat on the sofa in the hotel to rest. The spacious and bright floor-to-ceiling glass behind the sofa had been shattered long ago. The cool night breeze poured in and blew the thick curtains. Cyril, who was sitting on the sofa, was very alert. He deliberately shattered the floor-to-ceiling glass so that he could leave immediately if there was anything strange. He did not need to go around to the hotel entrance. The injured Noah was brought from the 5th floor to the 1st floor. He passed through the dark lobby and stood in front of Cyril. He wanted to stand, but Cyril's subordinates forced him to kneel. Noah, who had been shot in the thigh, resisted angrily. He was a soldier. Even if he was now a prisoner, the pride of a soldier would not allow him to kneel to a notorious drug dealer. "You should tell all your people in the hotel to stop struggling and obediently put down their weapons, instead of standing in front of me and fighting against me with dignity." Cyril spoke. His voice was so cold that it was like a venomous snake swimming in a ditch. Anyone who heard it could not help but break out in a cold sweat. "You'd better obediently kneel in front of me and talk. Maybe you'll have a chance to talk to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire hotel lobby was filled with Noah's screams. The gunshot wound on his thigh was cruelly dug into with fingers. Noah was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. He still did not choose to kneel. He fell to the ground in pain. The gunshots in the hotel did not stop. Noah, who was in so much pain that his muscles were twitching, knew that they had exposed themselves so that he and his soldiers could leave. However, if he asked them to stop shooting now, Cyril would not let them go either. No, he could not let them all be exposed. They had to continue to stay in the hotel and continue to collect useful information for the country. Since the terrorist attack in September 3 years ago, their country had been working hard to know and prevent terrorist attacks in advance. Countries like Melbourne were loved by terrorists. They must have an intelligence network. The hotel was their intelligence network. Even if he died, they could not let the hotel be exposed. Noah, who was curled up, hugged his thigh that was bleeding from the bullet and suppressed the fear in his heart with all his willpower. He panted heavily and vented his pain with a loud voice, almost shouting, "Mr. Cyril, there is a big misunderstanding between us. I still don't understand why Mr. Cyril would target me." Someone must have said something to make Mr. Cyril misunderstand me. Misunderstanding? No, no, no. It's not a misunderstanding. You're a white man. I know very well what you want from me. So, there is no misunderstanding between you and me. Will, the someone that Noah thought of was Will. He must have said something to Cyril, causing him and his soldiers to be in danger. Unfortunately, I'm not going to give you what you want unless you can buy all of them back, Cyril said slowly with a cold smile on his face. However, I don't want to sell them to you. You can only take them from me. It's Will, right? I know it must be Will. Noah sneered. He wants to use Mr. Cyril to get rid of me. He must have thought so. Mr. Cyril, you've been deceived. You've been deceived by him. Will, this damn guy, because of the 4 paintings, he made him believe him. Chapter 5405. Cyril laughed out loud. Of course I know what Will wants to do, but it doesn't matter. Will, and you, of course Will is more important. I'll help him get rid of you, the guy who's been close to him from the beginning. We're in a cooperative relationship. There's no deception. Before he could finish his sentence, a dull sound came from the dark. Then, Cyril's face changed dramatically. He covered his painful arm. The bodyguards protecting Cyril also realized what had happened. They protected Cyril even more tightly and quickly retreated outside. Someone had shot Cyril in the dark, and he had been shot. Cyril, who was shot, was furious. He withdrew from the hotel and shouted, "Kill him! Kill all the white people related to him." Noah didn't have the chance or time to explain. When he heard Cyril's throat scream in pain, he knew that things had reached a very bad point. He resisted, and his reaction was extremely fast. As a well-trained soldier, Noah had been secretly looking for an opportunity to escape. He had been curled up on the ground. When Cyril retreated after being shot, he held the gun barrel that had been pressed against his forehead with one hand. He roared, jumped, and slammed his elbow into Cyril's jaw. At the same time, he snatched the submachine gun from the man's hand and swept it in Cyril's direction. "Kill them all! Kill them all!" Cyril's angry voice almost burst out from his throat. He wasn't afraid of making a big deal out of it. Now, he even had the thought of blowing up the entire hotel. With Cyril's order, the hotel was almost completely shrouded in gunfire. Gunshots were heard, and screams were heard. Noah, who resisted, hid behind the sofa and kept shooting. He didn't know how long he could hold on, but he knew that he wouldn't survive the night. Someone shot Cyril. Who was it? Was it one of them? Or was it someone else? The sofa quilt was shot full of holes, and the leather cushion was broken, revealing pieces of sponge. With doubts and injuries, Noah rolled a few times and left the sofa under the cover of darkness, heading towards the elevator. He was very careful to ensure that he would survive long enough to report the situation of his hotel to his country. Xia Jinyuan, who had secretly injured Cyril, took advantage of the chaos and went to the 5th floor. He aimed according to the sound of the sound and fired based on his intuition. He did not need to kill Cyril with one shot. He only needed to make Cyril believe that the person who fired the shot was someone from Noah's side, someone from the hotel. That would be enough. Yi Qian had been staying in the guest room on the 5th floor the entire time. Alice Chung Jingjing, who had gotten some rest, sat on the bed. She occasionally glanced at the woman standing beside her. She pursed her lips, and her gaze was dark and unreadable. These Chinese people, when did they arrive in Melbourne? When did he enter the hotel? Also, how did he find her so quickly and take the opportunity to save her when Noah and Cyril were fighting? Did they know who she was? Did they know why she was in Melbourne? Alice, who was sitting quietly, kept thinking. Her heart was not calm. After a while, she suddenly said, "Is my husband okay now?" Alice had too many suspicions, so she chose to ask her husband about it, hoping to obtain information that would be beneficial to her. There was a G3 guard at the door. Yi Qian, who only needed to keep an eye on Alice, looked at her and said calmly, "Sorry, we don't know about your husband's situation." Once they're done with their business, It won't take long for us to retreat. So they're going to deal with Noah. Yi Qian exhaled softly. The T6 combatant, who was with the family of 3, silently wiped his sweat. They were really going to leave soon. A child's intuition was sometimes so sharp that it was terrifying. The T6 combatant did not even make a sound. Time passed extremely slowly, so slow that it felt like time had stopped. The hotel, which had its electrical equipment destroyed, was still dark. The only difference was that the Melbourne police had finally arrived at the entrance of the hotel. They really did not want to come over, but the foreigners staying in the hotel had asked for help from the embassies of their respective countries. Several embassies immediately called the presidential palace to alert the president. No matter how reluctant the police were, they had no choice but to step in. Fortunately, the president had sent the military, and it was no longer the police who had to face Cyril. Chapter 5407. Cyril, who was sitting in the car and bandaging his injured arm, received the call. After listening to it, he gritted his teeth and reluctantly left the hotel. The army was here, and he didn't want to be enemies with the army. Cyril's car was the first to leave the hotel, right under the eyes of the police and the army. The hundreds of armed subordinates he brought with him also left one after another. None of them fired rashly, but they all held the guns in their hands tightly. As long as the other side acted strangely, they would immediately start shooting. The hotel was full of guests, and the military didn't want to engage in a battle with Cyril in a place like this. The president was worried that the deranged Cyril would order his subordinates to slaughter the hotel guests, and that would cause a huge commotion. Cyril's men left the hotel, and the police and army entered the hotel and quickly took control of the entire hotel. The cloud of fear that had shrouded the hotel for 2 hours finally dissipated. Yi Qian and G3 took Alice out of the room and joined T6 and V8. Z7 continued to keep an eye on the outside, and Xia Jinyuan and Baihe blocked Noah, who was struggling to move with his injured leg. Under the green light of the floor signs and the stairs, Noah looked at the man standing in front of him, and the shock on his face slowly dissipated. "You are definitely not mercenaries." His tone was very certain. Xia Jinyuan smiled. "No, of course we are mercenaries. Mr. Will needs our help, and for the sake of money, we are very willing to help him. We are mercenaries, but obviously Mr. Noah is not Mr. Will's bodyguard." He was like a cat, leisurely teasing a mouse in a desperate situation. Noah sneered. They didn't admit it, but he knew that these guys were not mercenaries at all. "Did you save Alice?" "Mr. Will asked us to come here to save Alice. Now that we have saved her, there is no need to be surprised." Xia Jinyuan's finger slowly pulled the trigger of the pistol. "You are the person Mr. Will needs to deal with, and we will listen to Mr. Will's orders." Noah's hands, which were resting on the handrail, were trembling. This time, he really heard the call of death. "Before you kill me, please tell me if you're Chinese soldiers." He wanted to know if he had been defeated from the very beginning, defeated by the Chinese soldiers they had always looked down on. "We are mercenaries." Xia Jinyuan smiled, but his eyes were cold. He pulled the trigger, and the sound of gunfire came from the narrow corridor. It was not loud and could not be heard even if it was just a wall away. Noah slid down the handrail and rolled down the stairs. He fell to the corner of the wall. Even in death, he did not get an answer. After confirming Noah's death, the white crane walked up the stairs and smiled. "It's time for us to leave." Turning on the closed wireless communication, Xia Jinyuan's low voice entered the ears of all his comrades. Z7 retreated from the hall, and Yi Jian, who had already met up with T6 and V8, responded with a low hum. Her voice was pleasant, and everyone could hear her laughter. They could leave Melbourne now. The staff of the Chinese embassy rushed to the hotel as quickly as possible. The first room they went to was the room where T6 had stayed. The first thing they did was to talk to the family of 3. Alice saw her child in the hotel room, separated by only a wall. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the Chinese embassy arranged for cars to take all the Chinese guests who had stayed in the hotel to another hotel. Alice and her son were handed over to the Chinese embassy. Chapter 5408. The Chinese embassy was very efficient. From the time they drove over to the car, the whole process only took 10 minutes. The family of 3 who had been in the same room as T6 for nearly 2 hours didn't know anything except for the muddle-headed child. When the 2 adults were interviewed, they first felt uneasy, then serious, and finally felt a heavy responsibility. They almost swore to God that they wouldn't tell anyone about what happened tonight. When they got into the car, the couple still had serious expressions on their faces. They were afraid that the embassy staff would think that they were unreliable and untrustworthy. Although they were ordinary people, they were absolutely patriotic and loyal to their country. How could they do anything that would harm the country? Absolutely not. They might not be aware of other things, but they were definitely aware of this. With the embassy staff stepping in, Xia Jinyuan didn't need to step in. He handed the child they rescued from next door to Alice. Faced with Alice's apology, Xia Jinyuan said calmly, "Ms. Alice, the person you should thank the most is your husband. He was the one who protected you and your child. Now that you're back in our country, we hope that you can forget your previous identity. Our country will also protect you and your child well. We won't let you and your child be separated from each other again, or even forever." The scientist hadn't been rescued yet, but the Chinese side would never give up on rescuing him. Furthermore, the scientist's wife and child, whom he missed dearly, had returned to his country. Xia Jinyuan believed that the scientist, who was under house arrest, would be very happy to hear this and be even more determined to return to his country. Alice hugged her child, whom she hadn't seen for nearly 20 days. She kept kissing her child's cheeks, which were much thinner than before. Seeing the fear in her child's eyes, Alice, who was also Chinese, closed her eyes. Tears slowly flowed out from her eyes. She didn't answer Xia Jinyuan. Instead, she bowed deeply and said thank you. Sometimes, it wasn't that she didn't want to make a choice, but she didn't have a choice at all. Without a choice, she only had one path to take. Even if she had to part with her husband forever, she had to continue on. Yiqian glanced at her. A trace of pity flashed across his eyes. She was originally a spy planted by the scientist. In the end, she got married and had a child. Even if their relationship with each other for nearly 10 years was fake, it had become real. She sighed very softly, feeling a little emotional about the problem that Alice would have to face next. After her husband returned to the motherland, how was she going to face her husband who she had personally sent to a dead end? If they could forgive each other, it might be a very good ending. However, the trust between husband and wife would more or less crack. Perhaps there was still a chance to turn these difficult problems around. They could face them calmly and accept them again. The biggest problem was Alice's identity. He did not know what arrangements would be made for her after she returned to China. It was not up to the special forces to make the arrangements. Their mission was to successfully rescue Alice and bring her back to the country. It took several months for the Chinese side to actually carry out the rescue. It could be said that the entire plan was extremely cautious. It was only when the higher-ups felt that the time was right that they carried out the last step of the rescue plan. Now, this step was finally completed. Will, who had stayed up all night waiting for news, found out that Alice was about to leave Melbourne. It was already the next morning when Alice contacted him personally. Will dialed Xia Jinyuan's number again. It was an empty number. He was puzzled, but secretly relieved. If he didn't need to rescue his friend, he wouldn't have contacted mercenaries at all. Now that they had rescued his friend and left secretly with the money, it was not a bad thing. Chapter 5409. On the other hand, Cyril had been targeted by the country behind Noah and was on the list of terrorists that had to be dealt with. The plane headed straight for China took off and disappeared into the clouds. Yiqian put down her hand and asked the man beside her with a smile, "Captain Xia, are we going to be separated again?" His mission was completed, and so was hers. It was time for them to separate again. Xia Jinyuan smiled at his girlfriend, who still wanted to expose him. "Not now. We need to go back to Libby first, and then return to China together. That's when we'll part." Calculating the time, they had at most a week to spend together. His comrades who were standing next to him all suppressed the corners of their mouths to prevent themselves from laughing out loud. Qing Yao was used to being separated. On the other hand, their Q King smile was bitter. TSK, TSK, TSK. Z7 blinked and said with a smile, Qing Yao, do you really want to stay in the airborne unit? Actually, the airborne unit is not bad. I heard that the food is very good. If you really want to stay, just say the word and they'll agree. As soon as he heard these words, it was obvious that he was up to no good. Or was he up to no good? Xia Jinyuan glanced at him. His gaze was unusually cold. It was so cold that it was like a sharp knife stabbing between Z7's eyebrows. Z7 was not afraid at all. He continued to play dirty. With your ability, you'll definitely do well in the airborne unit. Z7's fearless behavior made the rest of his comrades secretly light up a lamp for him. Just you wait, young man. You'll suffer when you get back. Although they silently lit up the lamp in their hearts, no one stood up to stop him. They all crossed their arms and watched with great interest. Yi Qian knew that Z7 was deliberately provoking her man. After he finished speaking, Yi Qian said slowly, Do you not welcome me back to the unit? Do you have something against me? His words were so harsh that Z7's face immediately froze. Xia Jinyuan was not the only one looking at him. There were several cold gazes on him. Z7, who had wanted to laugh at Xia Jinyuan, almost burst into tears. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I swear to the heavens that I have absolutely no objections. I will definitely look forward to your return day and night. Don't mess with her. Don't mess with her. He would rather mess with Xia Jinyuan in the future than mess with Yi Jian. What a terrifying fellow. With just one sentence, he had placed him in the position of being the enemy of all his comrades. Even a dignified man like him was scared to the point of tears. Yi Qian was overjoyed when he saw Z7 swearing to the heavens. He winked at Xia Jinyuan a few times as if he was asking for credit. He looked very pleased with himself. Look, my girlfriend, I've returned the favor. With my girlfriend here, I'll definitely protect you and won't let you be wronged. Xia Jinyuan was very, very satisfied with this. It feels so good to be protected by my girlfriend. He sighed with his hands clasped behind his back, looking as proud as he could be. His comrades, who had been looking at Z7 with their eyes just a second ago, quickly changed their target. They looked coldly at their captain, who was showing off in front of them again. I'm a man with a wife. I'm a man with a wife and a child. One of them was T6, and the other was G3. V8 glanced at K7. At this moment, he was in desperate need of allies. Because he did not have a girlfriend. How infuriating! K7 glanced at him and looked away indifferently. V8 thought that he would not participate in such topics like before. Suddenly, K7 said, The person I like likes me. Chapter 54:10. Everyone was shocked. K7 had changed. He had changed. He was not just angry, he was vomiting blood. V8 covered his chest that had been stabbed repeatedly and complained bitterly. All of you have no conscience. Are you bullying the three of us because we don't have girlfriends? Don't count me in. You were still playing in the mud when I had a girlfriend. Z7 raised his eyebrows. Before he joined the army, he was a playboy in the capital. Who didn't have a girlfriend? He did, but they all broke up. He, who didn't have a girlfriend, snorted. His voice was very cold. I'll go on vacation immediately after I return to the country. I'll settle my personal matters during the vacation. I want a vacation too. V8 was devastated. Yi Qian looked at V8 and then at the tall and handsome Bai. He expressed his opinion. I think Bai can find a girlfriend even if he stays at home and doesn't go out. The premise was that he really wanted to find one. V8, who had been hurt repeatedly, didn't want to talk anymore, saying that he wasn't as good-looking as Bai. That was a roundabout way of saying it. Qing Yao, you become bad. You become bad after spending so much time with Q King. The sad V8 decided not to talk to these unfriendly comrades. He wanted to heal alone. After a round of insulting exchanges, the 8 of them left the airport and returned to the car that the embassy had arranged for them. It was time for them to return to Liabi. Liabi was still the same as before they left. There were constant fights in various cities, and there were no signs of a ceasefire. The militants and the government forces continued to fight. The rebels wanted to take over the current government and establish a new one. The three sides were not willing to give way to each other. The people were in dire straits, and there was no hope for them. Stepping onto the devastated land again, Yi Qian and the rest of them looked especially solemn. They didn't look as relaxed as they did after completing the mission. This was a land soaked in blood and tears. There were too many tragedies happening every day. Separation in life and death, destruction of families, destitution, helplessness. You could see it all in one day. The only good news was that the rebels in the capital had all retreated 3 days ago. Now, only the militants and the government forces were left in the city. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the car, looked at the government troops outside. His furrowed brows finally relaxed. At least now that the rebels had left, the government troops could focus on fighting the illegal militants. The car was bumpy all the way. Although sporadic gunshots could be heard from time to time, the journey was smooth. By the time they arrived at the peacekeeping camp, it was already around 4 in the afternoon. Someone was standing at the gate of the barracks. She was talking to the peacekeepers who were standing guard. She seemed to be a little agitated. Judging from her back, she was a woman. Looking at her equipment, she was a female war reporter. The peacekeeping soldier standing guard saw a car parked in front of him. Then, a few Chinese peacekeepers wearing blue peacekeeping helmets came down. He motioned for the reporter who was talking to him to stand aside first. "Comrade, please stand aside first. We will only let you in after we confirm your identity. This is the rule of our military camp. Please understand. Thank you." After he finished speaking, he moved to the side and didn't let the female war reporter stand in front of him. Bai He and G3 suddenly stopped when they were about to reach the gate of the barracks. They both looked forward. G3 said in a low voice, "Why is it a reporter from Base C? Why did she come to our side?" The female war reporter who was stopped outside and thought that she had been neglected was none other than the reporter from Base C, Chen Shuzhen, who had been rescued by our military. Chapter 54:11. Qing Niao. Bai He called out to Yi Qian, who was walking forward. The three of them whispered a few words to each other. Yi Qian discreetly looked at the Gulf Coast reporter, whose body language was quite rich. He nodded slightly and said, "All right, I understand. Get back into the car. I'll head over alone." G3 and Bai He had both participated in the search for reporter Chen, so they were worried that she would mistake them for someone else. When Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in the car, saw that G3 and Bai He had returned, he asked Yi Qian to go over alone to verify their identities. When they got into the car, he asked, "What's the matter? Did something happen?" The car they were driving was not a military vehicle, so they could not get close to the camp. They had to stop at a safe zone and verify their identities before they could drive into the camp. G3 said, "The Gulf Coast reporter is here again." When Xia Jinyuan heard that, his thin lips tightened a little. The T6 combatant sneered, "A weasel paying a New Year's greetings to a chicken. She's up to no good. We rescued her, but she's still trying to frame us." Everyone had an extremely bad impression of reporter Chen, including Xia Jinyuan. "Just don't give her a chance," Xia Jinyuan said calmly. "Her identity is sensitive, so just avoid her if you run into her." "I don't want to run into her at all." The T6 combatant who spoke had a cold look in his eyes. "She's so bent on finding trouble with our army that she came to the Gulf Coast to report and smear the image of our peacekeepers. She's really vicious." The T6 combatant was speaking the truth and was not biased at all. Every time Chen Shuzhen interviewed the peacekeepers of other countries, she would ask them what their image of the Chinese peacekeepers was. She would even mislead the peacekeepers being interviewed to achieve her goal. In the end, she did not succeed even once. We don't have any negative news for her to report. No matter how much she reports, she won't be able to get any news that can ruin our army's image. G3 patted the T6 combatant on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't take it to heart. She's very rare. Most of the Gulf Coast citizens are still very friendly." The coldness on the T6 combatant's face faded a lot. Previously, reporter Chun had come to the Chinese peacekeepers' camp countless times. But every time she came back, she would be stopped and did not manage to enter the camp successfully. This time, when she came back again, she had an extra pass that allowed her to enter and leave the camp. Reporter Chun, who had been stopped at the entrance and was able to get in and out of the camp, as a reporter, she was allowed to enter and leave as a reporter. The soldiers did not let her in and out was allowed her to enter and go in and out of the camp as a reporter. Reporter Chun could not take it. She was a reporter and had a pass. Why was she not allowed to enter? Was it because she was a reporter from the Gulf Coast that the Chinese peacekeepers neglected her? Because of this, reporter Chun became very agitated. Come. Was standing was and was. And standing was Lee. And were was. And were standing were. Chun. Chun Shuzhen was so angry that she was trembling all over. I'm a war reporter. You have no right to stop me from taking photos. Comrade, our army is not stopping you from taking photos. It's just that the area you're taking photos in is our military base and under our temporary jurisdiction. Our army has the right to stop you from taking photos. The peacekeepers did not budge at all. Chun Shuzhen's status as a reporter was of no use at all. Yi Qian did not get back into the car. Instead, he stood at the gate and waited for Xia Jinyuan to drive the car into the camp. When the car passed through, Yi Qian was about to step into the camp when he was stopped by reporter Chun. Chapter 54:12. Yi Qian wanted to pretend that he did not hear her, but out of courtesy, he stopped and motioned for the car to wait for her not far away. The car could not be driven away. If it was driven away, she would not have an excuse to leave immediately. The sentry was still verifying Chun Shuzhen's ID. Seeing her call out to the female peacekeeper who had shown her her ID, the sentry took a few steps closer and reminded Yi Qian in a low voice. When Chun Shuzhen saw this, the anger on her face became even more apparent. She thought that the sentry was deliberately making things difficult for her, but she had no choice but to stand there and get angry. It was only when Yi Qian took the initiative to walk over that her expression improved slightly. Yi Qian, who approached her, saluted her and spoke before she could. Sorry, we can't be interviewed by reporters alone. Please wait here for a moment. We will let you go after we confirm that there are no mistakes. After that, he saluted again and turned around to leave without giving Chun Shuzhen a chance to speak. Hey, Chun Shuzhen, who thought that she could finally interview the Chinese peacekeeper, was dumbfounded. She was stunned for a while and watched the female peacekeeper leave. She thought that after she got the pass, the Chinese peacekeeper would definitely be respectful to her and would not reject her like before. They would not be so serious that they did not give her any face at all. She did not expect that after getting the pass, she would still be rejected and neglected like before. They would not be polite to her just because she was a Taiwanese reporter. Chun Shuzhen, who felt that she had been neglected by the sentry and treated lightly by the female peacekeeper, was so angry that her hands, which were holding the camera, were trembling. Is this how you treat your guests when you claim to be a country of etiquette? Yi Qian, who had walked far away, heard reporter Chun Shuzhen's question from behind him. Yi Qian frowned slightly and seemed to understand why G3 and why he were unhappy when reporter Chun Shuzhen was mentioned. What did the sentry strictly carrying out the rules and regulations have to do with hospitality? Why did these words sound so strange? Why was it strange? Yi Qian, who got into the car, quickly got an answer. She has a sense of superiority. She thinks that since she is a Taiwanese, we should treat her as a distinguished guest. We should coax and flatter her politely. Only then can we make her happy and satisfy her sense of superiority in front of us. The T6 combatant instantly cleared Yi Qian's doubts. No wonder he felt that her words were strange. It was true. Is there something wrong with her here? Yi Qian tapped his head and said, How bold of him to come to the Chinese soldiers to feel superior. People with brain diseases are too stupid. Of course, they'll be bold. Z7 scoffed and turned to ask Chen Shuzhen why she was here. I got a pass. The sentries are still verifying its authenticity. Once the verification is done and there are no problems, we'll be able to see her in the barracks. Just as Yiqian finished speaking, V8 sighed. It's going to be a sad story. They thought they could find a flaw in our peacekeeping soldiers, but in the end, they came in high spirits only to return in defeat. Speaking of which, the comrades in the car all laughed softly. Only then did Yiqian know that in addition to reporting on the battle in Liabia, reporter Chun from the Gulf Coast also had a heavy responsibility of finding flaws in our peacekeeping soldiers. Every time she saw a peacekeeping soldier, she would take photos and follow him in an attempt to capture a flaw. Apart from that, she was also good at researching. If our peacekeeping soldiers were on patrol with other countries' peacekeeping soldiers, she would immediately go over to interview them to see if she could dig out any flaws. She would then embellish it and report it wantonly in the Gulf Coast to achieve her goal of smearing our soldiers. Chapter 54:13. However, Chun Shuzhen never thought that she wouldn't be able to dig up any dirt on our army, even though she worked so hard. Unwilling to give up, she tried her best to enter the Chinese peacekeeping camp to look for dirt. She didn't believe that she wouldn't be able to find any dirt on the Chinese soldiers when she was so close to them. In this regard, Yi Qian said that even if she entered the Chinese peacekeeping camp and kept an eye on them day and night, she still wouldn't be able to find any dirt on them. You go over and remind the female peacekeepers to be careful. Xia Jinyuan, who had been sitting in the front passenger seat, turned his head and said to Yi Qian, "She has a certain reputation in Wanhai. Any news report about her will cause a stir in Wanhai. Since she came with a purpose, she won't give up so easily. It's best to be cautious." Yi Qian nodded with a solemn expression. "Okay, I'll go over and remind the female soldiers right away." The sentinel there had finished verifying that there was no problem with Reporter Chen's pass and immediately let her in. Reporter Chen's mood had just improved when she entered the camp, but it immediately turned bad again because the two female peacekeepers accompanying her stopped her from taking photos. They had serious expressions and were very forceful in stopping her. "Reporter Chun, the Chinese peacekeeping camp is an important military area. No one is allowed to take photos at will. We have a place to take photos. Please come with me." The female soldiers who received Reporter Chun were none other than Xiao Tong and Gao Xiao. The two of them, one active and one quiet, one strict and one smiling, cooperated very well and were already remembered by the colonel in charge of the camp. Knowing that Reporter Chun had entered the camp with a pass, the colonel's heart was as clear as a mirror. After confirming that there was no mistake, he immediately arranged for the two of them to receive her. At this moment, Reporter Chun faced Gao Xiao and Xiao Tong with a dark face from beginning to end. She didn't even have the chance to raise her camera to take photos. Yi Qian had already seen the female soldiers. He hadn't seen them for more than 10 days. When the female soldiers saw Yi Qian, they all smiled like flowers blooming on their faces. They surrounded Yi Qian and chattered nonstop. They talked about how a mortar landed less than 200 meters away from the southwest corner of the camp. The bomb fragments exploded into the camp, and the entire camp entered a level 1 alert state, ready to fire at any time. He also talked about how a group of rebels disguised as government troops tried to drive into the camp to cause chaos. They were discovered by the sentries, and the peacekeepers gathered in 30 seconds and were ready for battle. Just the day before yesterday, the engineering team entered a village to tamp and level up the road that had been blown up so that the villagers who had no water and food could pass through and the children could go to school normally. In the end, they were surrounded by a group of armed men. At that time, the situation was quite tense. Some villagers had already been killed by the armed men. The team leader of the engineering team stood out to negotiate. After 14 hours of confrontation, the armed men withdrew. When they returned yesterday, a male soldier said that they were all prepared to sacrifice themselves. The female soldiers whispered. In less than half a month, They had seen the cruelest side of war. Facing the harsh environment and the cruel war, they grew up very quickly. Compared to half a month ago, every female soldier had a more determined look on their faces. The female soldier, Ding Yue, patted the 20-kilogram bulletproof protective gear on her body and smiled at Yi Qian. I wasn't used to wearing it at first, but now I'm so used to it that I can't even feel its weight. You have to get used to using it to save your lives at a critical time. After Yi Qian finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes darkened a little. So, you've joined the patrol team? Chapter 54:14. The female soldiers were sent here as logisticians, so they were equipped with bulletproof protective gear. However, because their range of activity was within the camp, they were not fully armed. They would only be fully armed when they went out on patrol. Yi Qian actually hoped that the female soldiers could join the patrol team. This was a rare experience for them, but considering the issue of safety, Yi Qian did not take the initiative to suggest it. She did not want to see them get into trouble on this dangerous land. She could accept getting injured, but the sacrifice was too heavy, and she was very unwilling to face it. Yang Zhen, the squad leader, smiled and answered Yi Qian, "Yes, we joined the patrol team." The colonel only agreed after we passed the comprehensive test. "Instructor, don't worry. We will take good care of ourselves." She saw the worry in Yi Qian's eyes and immediately comforted Yi Qian. "Your decision is very good, but you must remember that when you face any danger, the first thing you think of is not sacrificing yourself, but protecting your own life and the safety of your comrades. The country did not train you to be sacrificed so easily. You must remember that there is still a long, long way to go. You must walk down this path well." In the past, Uncle Jin and Principal Chun had also told Yi Qian this. Xia Jinyuan had also said something similar. Now, Yi Qian was telling the female soldiers the same thing, and it was passed down from generation to generation. The female soldiers knew Yi Qian's intentions, so they listened to her and kept her advice in mind. "Does the country know that you have joined the patrol team? Did they raise any objections?" Yi Qian asked again. Battalion Commander Tian was a protective person. If he did not agree, the higher-ups would have a headache. Yang Zhen said, "Yes, the battalion commander agreed. He even said that he supports our decision." Why did Battalion Commander Tian agree to join the patrol team? As a battalion commander, he had many considerations. Actually, the female soldiers' main job was logistics. While the risk factor was reduced, they could also experience the cruelty of the battlefield for the first time. However, experiencing the cruelty of the battlefield was different from directly facing the cruelty of the battlefield. The latter allowed the female soldiers to grow faster. This was because the female soldiers were not only female soldiers, they were also the country's first female special forces team. They had to face the cruelty of the battlefield head-on to make themselves more stable, calm, and understand the meaning of their daily training. Why did the higher-ups agree? The reason was very simple. Whatever Battalion Commander Tian could think of, they could also think of. Even the higher-ups had been waiting for the female soldiers to take the initiative to join the patrol team. Therefore, the colonel did not reject Yang Zhen's request. Instead, he first tested the female soldiers comprehensively. After passing the test, he reported to his superiors, and the country agreed to let the female soldiers join the patrol mission. They were originally the main logistics force, but now they could also participate in patrols and face possible battles. For the female soldiers, there was no better live ammunition training than this mission. With the combat experience in Liabai, it would be of great help to the future development of the female soldiers and even the entire female special forces. In fact, the female soldiers knew very well why the higher-ups had agreed. After talking to Battalion Commander Tian over the phone for the first time on the battlefield, they understood Battalion Commander Tian's good intentions even more. At that time, they needed to select female soldiers for peacekeeping in Liabia. It was Battalion Commander Tian who took the initiative and guaranteed that the female soldiers would be up to the task. Battalion Commander Tion hoped that the female soldiers could achieve some results so that the higher-ups could see the growth of the female soldiers. In the future, they could entrust any mission to the female soldiers without any worries. It had been so long since it was established. The female soldiers had to make some achievements. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.